Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto uncovers his true potential. One discussion in the academy introduces Naruto to his first real friends and changes his life forever. Together, they will work hard, push each other, and unlock their true potential. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 28, Final Moments. After Hyuga Hayashi left the infirmary, the medical shinobi entered the room and started attending to Niji once again. After they had finished their preparations, they informed the Hyuga prodigy that he would be able to leave the room in about 10 minutes before heading out of the room themselves to pick up another competitor from the exams. Niji, realizing that he was now alone, took the opportunity to reflect further on what Hayashi had told him and what his father had written him. He closed his eyes and prepared to meditate. Where am I? Niji's meditation did not last long. Rock Lee, who had been lying unconscious on one of the beds next to him, had just woken up. The spandex-wearing genin was now standing up out of the bed and was looking around the room. You're in the infirmary. Niji answered his teammate. Lee's eyes turned to the Hyuga. He stared at him in confusion. Niji? You were sent here after your match with Sasuke. Apparently, he used a genjutsu on you and knocked you unconscious with it. The Hyuga continued to clarify. Oh. Lee's eyes dropped as he now recalled what had happened to him. He remembered his fight with Sasuke and how, in his mind, it was going. The Uchiha had been able to match his speed and strength in the beginning half of the match, and he had truly impressed him. Lee was about to use the primary lotus and try to end the match when his world started to fade. Instead of real life, he saw a world where he was humiliated by the Uchiha easily, and watched as his sensei rejected him and his work ethic. That was a genjutsu, huh? But it felt so real. Lee thought as he shook his head. Maybe because it is real, partially speaking. I lost then and there to Sasuke-kun and embarrassed myself. I couldn't beat raw talent. Thank you for visiting me down here, Niji. The Taijutsu specialist mumbled quietly after a moment of silence. Lee, although I'm glad that you woke up while I was here so I could see how you are doing, does it really look like I was here just to visit? Niji asked. Lee looked up and turned his attention to Niji in more detail. It was then that the boy had noticed the various bandages on Niji's body, and some of the wounds that were visible on him. Even now, the Hyuga looked like he was in pain. Lee continued to study his teammate in shock. Shock. What happened to you? He asked in surprise. I lost my fight. Against Hinata-sama. His teammate replied. Hinata-san? Lee blinked in surprise. She fought well, like a true Hyuga. I was wrong about who she really was. She was no failure. Niji answered with a sigh. The boy shook his head and looked downward as he recalled the true circumstances involved with his father's death. I was wrong about a lot of things. As much as he didn't like Niji's comments towards other people, Lee always remembered everything the Hyuga had ever told him. He knew that Hinata was Niji's cousin, and that he saw her as weak. Niji had often referred to her as a failure, and had even compared her to Lee himself on more than one occasion. Hearing that she, this failure that Niji criticized often, had managed to defeat him surprised Lee. In addition, to hear Niji claim that he was wrong about who she was surprised him even more. Lee started to speak, but he was interrupted by the sound of a door opening. The medical shinobi had brought in another genin, Karatsuchi, the girl from Iwagakure. They laid her down on one of the beds and began treating her immediately. The girl had many open wounds and bruises on her body, and she seemed as if she couldn't move her body much. She had, apparently, broken multiple bones in her body. I take it that Uzumaki managed to defeat you. Niji spoke to the IWA genin. Yup. Karatsuchi answered as she winced in pain from the medical shinobi working on some of her injuries. He gave me a hell of a fight. He managed to win again. Against both a shinobi from one of Iwa's great clans, and against the granddaughter of the Tsuchikage. Niji mumbled to himself. I misjudged him as well, it seems. He won too? Lee's eyes widened even further. Tears of joy started to develop in his eyes. I can't believe I let the genjutsu make me doubt my beliefs. With hard work and dedication, you can accomplish anything. Hinata-san and Naruto-kun were able to do that against their opponents, so it's possible. And if they can do it, then so can I. I will reach their level and become a genius of hard work as well. Lee was now feeling more heated than he had been in his life. He was looking forward to getting back to training and improving himself. Although he may have failed in his match, his ideals were proven true by Naruto and Hinata, and he was going to train even harder to reach the same success they had and become a true genius of hard work. Naruto winced in pain. Naruto-kun, just take a deep breath. Hinata told her crush gently. It'll only sting for a little bit. The Uzumaki said nothing else as he watched his teammate rub some medicinal cream she had made on the burn he received on his leg. As Hinata had said, there was a stinging pain from the cream, but he could tell that it was working. The wound itself was starting to get smaller and actually clearing up. A minute had passed before she finished applying the cream. Once she was done, the burn was completely gone. She put the medicinal cream away and pulled out another jar of cream, one designed for cuts and bruises. She then started rubbing it on some of the wounds Naruto received elsewhere. Your creams are awesome, Hinata-chan. I can't believe you were able to make these. Naruto smiled at the girl while he praised her work. I'm glad they are able to help, Naruto-kun. She told him with a similar smile. She then turned her attention back to applying the cream. Although, I have to admit, I'm surprised that they are so potent. I didn't think they'd heal your wounds so fast. Probably because of the QB. It's amplifying the healing effects of the creams. Shikamaru realized. It only took another minute before Hinata had finished applying the creams onto all of Naruto's wounds. Once she was finished, Naruto gave her a thumbs up and a wide smile. Thanks a lot again, Hinata. I kinda really needed that. He told her cheerfully. Don't thank me. She told him, matching his smile with one of her own. And congrats again on the match. You and Karatsuchi really did amazing down there. Yeah, I'll say. That was a really impressive battle. Shikamaru added his own thoughts. You definitely did a good job. I'll be stunned if you aren't promoted. Thanks. The Uzumaki laughed in response. But I'll be surprised if you two don't as well. You both kicked serious, but during your fights. Well, we have another set of matches to prove ourselves. Hinata told her crush. She then turned her attention towards Shikamaru. You know, Shikamaru-kun, if you win your fight, you and I will be fighting. If I win my fight. That's the key word. The Nara side. Sasuke is going to be hell to fight. Naruto opened his mouth to respond to the Nara's comment, but he was interrupted by Genma's voice. It is now time to begin the second round. Will Nara, Shikamaru and Uchiha Sasuke please come forward? The proctor announced. And speak of the devil. Shikamaru grumbled. You're not doubting yourself, are you, Shikamaru? Naruto questioned in surprise. Nah, I know what I'm capable and what I can do. I just think Sasuke is going to be a pain in the ass to fight. The Nara grumbled, placing his hands in the pockets of his pants. Don't think too much about that. Just go out there and fight. Nothing more to do than that. The Uzumaki informed him with a shrug. Naruto-kun's right. Just go out there and fight him, and do your best. I'm sure you will do well, Shikamaru-kun. Hinata told him with a smile. And I'd actually like to try and fight you myself, which would happen if you win. So, do your best. Heh. Shikamaru smirked in response. I'll do my best, you guys. Don't worry about me. With those words, Shikamaru started to walk off and head towards the exit to the waiting area. Naruto and Hinata waved goodbye to him, wishing him good luck in his match. Seeing that Shikamaru was starting to head to the match, Sasuke left his own position in the waiting room and followed behind quietly, ready to begin their fight. And now it's time for Sasuke to kick another dude's ass. Kiba exclaimed excitedly. Akamaru barked in agreement with his partner. I must say, Kiba, I am impressed that you have so much confidence in Sasuke. Based on some of the things you say to him during our training sessions, I had assumed you really didn't think Sasuke was capable of anything. Kakashi commented nonchalantly. Hey, Sasuke is up there and he's representing Team 7. He's obligated to do well and show how good of a team we are. Kiba informed his sensei. So, he can't lose. He has to win this whole thing for the team and kick everybody's asses. Kakashi mumbled in response to his student's declaration. The Jonin pulled out a copy of his favorite book, Ika Paradise, and started to read from where he last was. Damn it, Kakashi-sensei. Put the book away and pay attention to your student. Kiba and Akamaru both growled at their sensei. Sakura wasn't really paying attention to either her sensei or her teammate. She was simply looking down towards the arena. She watched both Sasuke and Shikamaru step onto the battlefield. Shikamaru did good, but I know you, Sasuke. If you were able to beat Lee, then you can definitely go farther. Do your best. She wished her teammate and Crush good luck. Your student looks miserable out there, Anko. Ibiki commented once Shikamaru and Sasuke took their positions to face each other in the center of the arena. That's how he always is. Shikamaru's a lazy ass and doesn't like to do work. He looked a little like this when fighting Shino, but now that he's already had a fight, he's going to look even more like that now. Anko informed the man with a sigh. It's no big deal though. When push comes to shove, he'll fight. He has enough pride to be willing to do so. And I'm sure he'll impress everyone here again. He's certainly a tactical fighter, if his fight with Shino was any indication. Kurenai added. I'm interested to see how he fares against the Uchiha heir. To be honest, I'm curious myself. Anko admitted as she looked intently at her student. Fight hard, Shikamaru, and I don't mean just tactically. I think you're really going to need to work to win this time. Both Shikamaru and Sasuke studied each other as they waited for the proctor to call the fight. After a few seconds of silence, Shikamaru finally sighed and got into position to fight. Let's just get this over with. He grumbled. Sasuke scoffed at the Nara's attitude. I know you're putting on that attitude more than you actually feel. You're trying to get me to underestimate you or something. Don't think for a second I'm going to let up on you even for a second. I wasn't putting on an attitude. The Nara shook his head in frustration. Lovely. I just made this fight more troublesome for myself without even trying. Jinma noticed that the two seemed to be ready to fight. He raised his hand into the air before he started to speak. First match of the second round, between Nara Shikamaru and Uchiha Sasuke, begin. The proctor announced. Sasuke responded immediately, jumping backwards and making a set of hand signs familiar to Shikamaru. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. He unleashed 3 fireballs that flew towards the Nara. Shikamaru jumped out of the way in time, avoiding the Uchiha's jutsu. He, however, predicted Shikamaru's movements and charged him. Sasuke attempted to punch him in the face, but Shikamaru was able to block with his arm just in time. The Uchiha attempted to deliver another punch towards Shikamaru, but the Nara managed to dodge by moving backwards slightly. Shikamaru then proceeded to jump backwards to place more distance between him and the Uchiha, but Sasuke didn't let him. He charged him again immediately, forcing Shikamaru to stop moving and to defend himself from Sasuke's next attack. He's going to overpower me in hand-to-hand combat. I can't find an opening for me to counterattack him from. I need to take him out some other way. Shikamaru told himself while moving out of the way of another punch from the Uchiha. As Sasuke continued to try and land a solid attack on Shikamaru, the Nara focused on dodging while he reached into his pocket. He pulled out a kunai with an explosive tag as quickly as he could and threw it onto the ground between him and Sasuke. He then activated a hand sign, causing it to light up. Shit! Sasuke mentally cursed as he backed up to avoid getting hit from the blast. Shikamaru, as well, jumped away from the explosion. Both genin had managed to get away just in time, and had placed a considerable amount of distance between each other. Shikamaru then proceeded to make hand signs for the same jutsu Sasuke had used. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Immediately, the Nara released a barrage of fireballs towards the Uchiha at varying speeds. They were, however, very low to the ground, which caused them to create shadows underneath them. The second he finished using the jutsu, he rapidly went through another set of hand signs. Ninja Art, Shadow Possession Jutsu. Shikamaru's shadow extended forward, following the fireballs that he had just unleashed. Soon, his shadow managed to pass a few of the fireballs and remained underneath them. Everything was aimed directly at the Uchiha. Sasuke proceeded to avoid many of the fireballs that were launched first before the shadow started to approach him. He jumped backwards to avoid being caught by the shadow. He then sidestepped to avoid another fireball when he noticed that the shadow was still following him and was about to reach him. What? His shadow goes that far? Sasuke jumped backwards again to avoid the approaching shadow. He then noticed that there's still a few fireballs from Shikamaru's jutsu flying towards him. He also noticed the shadows that they were creating. So he used the jutsu to give himself more shadows to extend his jutsu's length. Interesting. Realizing that the shadow was going to keep chasing him for a while, Sasuke finally decided to go back on the offensive against Shikamaru. Instead of jumping away from the attacks, he simply made a hand sign and disappeared. He knows the Shunshin. Of course, he does. Shikamaru grumbled as he cancelled his shadow possession jutsu. The Nara turned his head, expecting to see Sasuke right behind him. He was too late, however, and Sasuke managed to deliver a direct punch directly to his face, knocking the Nara backwards. Sasuke then charged him again, ready to continue with his assault. Shikamaru was in pain as he flew through the air. He noticed Sasuke was coming for him again. Therefore, he made a series of hand signs and unleashed his jutsu right as Sasuke reached him and was about to attack him again. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Before he hit the ground, the Nara released 3, slightly larger fireballs directly at the Uchiha head-on. Sasuke didn't have the proper time to react and, therefore, took the jutsu head-on. As a result, he was knocked backwards and his exposed skin experienced minor burns. He, as well, hit the ground hard. He winced in pain and gritted his teeth to prevent himself from shouting from the pain. Both genin pulled themselves off the ground as fast as they could. Shikamaru was the first, however, and he quickly made a hand sign. His shadow extended from his body and approached Sasuke once again. The Uchiha quickly used the Shunshin jutsu to disappear just in time before being hit by the technique. He reappeared behind Shikamaru and prepared to deliver a kick to his opponent's head. Shikamaru, however, predicted Sasuke's movements and turned around just in time to catch Sasuke's leg before it made contact. Seeing that he was caught and needed to get out, the Uchiha reached for a shuriken and tossed it at the Nara. Shikamaru was forced to let go of Sasuke and jump out of the way just before the weapon managed to hit him. Now that he was free, Sasuke charged Shikamaru and delivered another punch to the Nara's face. Shikamaru was sent flying back with enough force and hit the walls of the battlefield. He then fell to the ground. The Nara slowly pulled himself. His nose was bleeding and it seemed as if his body was rather sore. Had enough yet, Shikamaru? Is this too troublesome for you? Sasuke questioned with a smirk. This was troublesome the moment it started. That's not even a question. Shikamaru grumbled in reply. He spat on the ground for a second before he turned his attention back to the Uchiha. But I still got a few more things I can do before this ends. Then bring it. The Uchiha exclaimed as he ran towards Shikamaru. Damn, Sasuke's taijutsu really hurts, doesn't it? Naruto noted with a frown on his face as he watched his teammate fight the Uchiha. His attacks really send Shikamaru flying. Lee is a taijutsu expert and Sasuke was trained to fight him on equal ground. Hinata recalled. I'm sure that means his taijutsu has to be well above average. She, like Naruto, then frowned as she looked at her teammate. Unfortunately, taijutsu is Shikamaru-kun's weakest skill set. I know. The Uzumaki sighed. Just got to have faith in him though. Shikamaru's smart. I'm sure he can turn this around and catch Sasuke by surprise. Hinata nodded in agreement with her crush. The two continued to watch their teammate fight, hoping for the best. Keeping the fight at a distance is to my disadvantage. He's at his weakest up close. I just need to keep hammering at him with taijutsu and he'll fall down. Just got to make sure I'm watching his shadow. Sasuke told himself as he continued to charge Shikamaru again. The Nara quickly raised his arms and blocked Sasuke's next attack. He then jumped backwards, avoiding a kick from the Uchiha. Sasuke, however, continued to charge him and keep the two opponents close together. Shikamaru was forced to concentrate solely on blocking Sasuke's attacks. This is hell. I gotta catch him off guard somehow. The Nara noted in his head. He then noticed one of the holes in the ground of the battlefield that resulted from one of his multiple explosive tags. The hole was close enough for him that he could probably get to it quickly. Immediately, an idea came to his head. Maybe that can work. Maybe I can win this. Immediately, Shikamaru jumped away from Sasuke and ran back, focusing on getting away from the Uchiha and to the hole. Sasuke continued to charge him, trying to keep them close, so he could continue to fight the Nara head-on. Shikamaru, however, was able to reach the hole. He jumped down inside of it, and was underground. The Uchiha proceeded to make another set of hand signs. I'm not going to let him hide underground for long. I'll just force him back out. He thought as he finished the hand signs. The Uchiha stood right above the hole before releasing his jutsu. Fire style, fireball jutsu. A giant fireball the size of the hole developed from Sasuke's mouth and headed directly into the hole. It made direct contact with the ground and caused many of the surrounding earth to catch on fire. A few seconds before the fireball continued to sink into the hole and into the darkness. Soon, the fireball was gone. The Uchiha looked downward into the cautiously for Shikamaru to see if he was still in there. When he looked down, however, he couldn't see him. Well, that flushed him out all right. Sasuke told himself as he quickly scanned the rest of the battlefield. All right, Shikamaru, where did you go to now? Sasuke continued to search the battlefield for his opponent. After a few seconds of searching, however, he felt his body stiffen. He could no longer move his head to search the area. His eyes widened as realization dawned on him. His fucking shadow hit me. Damn it. He cursed. But where is he? And how the hell did he hit me? As if to answer the question, Sasuke felt his body try and grip onto something in the middle of the air. He wasn't doing anything in particular, but he realized what was happening. Shikamaru was climbing out of the hole. A few seconds passed before the Nara managed to get of the hole. He then turned his head in a way so that Sasuke could see him. How did you manage to stay in the hole? You should have been burnt to a crisp if you actually stayed down there. The Uchiha questioned, angry with himself that he had been outsmarted. The hole provided me with plenty of shadows that I could manipulate and protected with myself. Using the shadow protection jutsu. Shikamaru explained. I used the shadows to shield myself from the fire. Then I used the shadows to hide my presence and make you believe that I was not there. That gave me the opening I needed to catch you in my shadow. Damn it. Sasuke growled quietly as his eyes started to change shape. They turned red and had 3 tomo develop around the central pupil. You can activate the Sharingan if you want, Sasuke, but it's probably just a waste of chakra and energy for you. It's not going to change the fact that you were caught and not going to help you do anything about it. The Nara shrugged in response, an action that Sasuke mimicked. God damn it, in the end, I still underestimated him, and now I lost. The Uchiha realized, feeling frustrated and upset with himself. Hot damn. He did it. Anko exclaimed happily, clapping loudly from the audience. He's moving on. I knew Shikamaru had it in him. Way to go, Shikamaru. Anko, for the love of God, sit down. Ibiki growled at the woman. Sasuke kun. Sakura screamed in despair at the sight of the battlefield. Even with the Sharingan, Sasuke wouldn't be able to do anything to fight back against Shikamaru now. Can't believe that happened. Shikamaru's changed. Damn. Kiba whistled in approval. He couldn't even be mad that Sasuke was about to lose. The fact that Shikamaru, the laziest person he had ever known, managed to fight and defeat Sasuke of all people was impressive to him. Kakashi continued to read Ika Paradise. Despite how he outwardly appeared to the people around him, he was paying attention to the battle in front of him. Underneath his mask, he was frowning. Sasuke, you did this to yourself. Hopefully you'll use this loss as motivation to keep training. Shikamaru. Hell yeah. Naruto cheered loudly. That was incredible. Hinata noted, equally as excited as Naruto, that their friend had managed to win. Now, all he has to do is finish it. The Uzumaki declared as he focused on Shikamaru intently. You got this, Shikamaru. End this match and impress everyone here. Sasuke's not the type of person that will surrender willingly. I'm actually going to have to knock him unconscious. Shikamaru told himself as he made a hand sign. He was starting to breathe really heavily, but still put forth as much effort as he could to use the jutsu. Ninja art, shadow neck binding. A shadow slowly started to crawl up Sasuke's body in the shape of a hand. Shikamaru had intended to use the shadow to strangle Sasuke and knock him unconscious. The shadow hand, however, stopped halfway as it approached Sasuke's throat. It then slowly started to go back down Sasuke's body back in the direction it came. The Nara quickly realized what was happening and his eyes widened. Damn it. Damn it. After the fight with Shino and all the hell Sasuke has put me through so far, I'm running dangerously low on chakra. Even when using the shadow of the hole, I don't have enough to use the neck binding technique. Shikamaru realized. He became aware of his body's condition and realized that, besides just heavy breathing, he was also starting to sweat. There's no way I'm in any condition to fight. I'm not even really in the best condition to finish him off. And there's not a damn way in hell I'll win any more fights. The Nara knew immediately what he was going to do. He called off the shadow possession jutsu, releasing Sasuke from his control. He then raised his hand into the air and spoke up, loud enough for everybody in the stadium to hear. I forfeit. He announced with a sigh. What? Naruto, Anko, and Kiba screamed from 3 separate sections in the audience. Both Naruto and Anko had fallen over, both surprised by Shikamaru's decision. Kiba, on the other hand, after the initial shock started to fade away, started to laugh at the Nara's move. Ha! Who was I kidding? He hasn't changed at all. Still the same lazy ass. He exclaimed, his laughter getting louder. Well, that was unexpected. Kakashi mentally chuckled as he looked away from his book and towards Sasuke. The Uchiha was staring with wide eyes at the Nara after the forfeit. Hopefully Sasuke still learns the lesson he needed to from that though. Sasuke-kun did win. Thank goodness. Sakura sighed in relief. The battle was a lot more stressful than she had thought it was going to be, and she was almost certain that her crush was going to lose. However, he ended up being okay. Sasuke was the winner, and that was all that mattered. I can't believe the nerve of that Shikamaru. Ino growled from her place in the stands. First he beats Choji in the preliminaries, then beats Shino in the first round, and now after causing a lot of harm and stress to Sasuke-kun, he just up and surrenders. He was a waste of a space. She gave the Nara the coldest look she could possibly give. Someone else should have had his spot in the exams. How dare he just quit when someone like me or Choji would have actually fought until the very end. Asuma covered his ears at the noise of his student. Ino somehow had managed to outdo herself, and found a way to be even louder. The man was starting to wonder if he would ever be able to hear properly again. Ino. I'd appreciate you not trash-talk my friend in front of me, please. Choji requested Ino strictly. The two genin members of Team 10 proceeded to argue amongst each other about Shikamaru. Ino continued to demean the Nara, while Choji defended him fervently. Asuma watched the bickering between his students and sighed. He didn't quite understand how somebody who wasn't even part of their team could result in so much drama and fighting. I got to say though, Ino is wrong. Shikamaru's forfeit was based on low chakra, it seems. And if that's the case, then he ended up saving himself from an embarrassing defeat in the next round or the embarrassment of having to quit right at the beginning. He made a good decision, and showed to everybody here that he is aware of his limits and knows when it is the right time to back off. Asuma mentally noted. More than anyone else here, that kid has earned a promotion to Chunin. The Jonin sensei of Team 10 wondered how exactly Ino was going to react when it would be announced that Shikamaru would become a Chunin. Then again, for his ear's sake, he was starting to hope that he wouldn't be there to witness her reaction in person. You forfeit? Sasuke repeated Shikamaru's decision in surprise. Yeah, I'm spent. I'm running dangerously low on chakra, and I don't even know if I'll manage to beat you. And, assuming I did, I know there's no way I would make it past the next match. Shikamaru answered with a sigh. Good match, Sasuke. With those words, Shikamaru started to walk away slowly towards the stairs and headed back to the waiting area. Sasuke stood therein in the battlefield for a few seconds before he deactivated his Sharingan and shook his head in frustration. I lucked out. If he hadn't have used that much chakra, I would have lost. And if that was a real fight, I'd be dead. The Uchiha realized as he started to walk up the stairs to the waiting area behind the Nara. I need to be more careful in my next fights. Shikamaru, you were so close. Naruto mumbled when Shikamaru finally arrived back in the waiting area. Yeah. I know. But I know my limits and I wasn't going to pass them. Believe me, I didn't want to surrender. The Nara commented with a grumble. Despite his annoyance before the match, he really didn't enjoy the idea of quitting. He actually was getting tired of being called a lazy ass all the time by everyone, and he knew that surrendering was not going to help his reputation in that regard. I know. I believe you, Shikamaru. The Uzumaki informed his friend. The blonde extended his fist out to the Nara. You did good out there anyway, Shikamaru. You did almost have him, and I think you showed everybody what you can do. I hope. The Nara smirked as he fist-bumped his teammate. You did, Shikamaru-kun. Hinata informed the Nara. You did amazing out there. Shikamaru opened his mouth to reply to the girl, but he was interrupted by another voice. Hey, Shikamaru. Sasuke spoke up as he arrived at the waiting area. Shikamaru and his teammates turned their heads to face the Uchiha boy. Sometime after the exam has passed, you and I are going to spar. You're going to have full access to all your chakra, and we're going to fight again. And next time, our match will be different. After saying what he wanted to say, Sasuke walked away towards the corner of the waiting area and continued to wait for his next match in solitude. Naruto and Hinata turned their attention to the Nara and smirked. He knows you basically kicked his ass, so he wants to fight you again fair and square later. Naruto commented with a laugh. Somehow, you picked up Sasuke as a rival. Good luck, Shikamaru. I'm sure Sasuke will be a good rival to keep pushing you to work hard as a shinobi. Hinata added with a smile. I hate everything. Shikamaru grumbled. The last thing he wanted was for Uchiha Sasuke of all people to constantly bother him about training and sparring. A few more minutes passed before Genma spoke up to the crowds of people. It's now time for the next match. Will Sabaku no Gaara and Uzumaki Naruto please come forward? Hinata and Shikamaru both stared at their blonde teammate. Naruto put on a neutral expression on his face before he sighed and shook his head. Naruto-kun, be safe, okay? Hinata requested. I'll do my best. The Uzumaki sighed in response. Naruto started to walk away towards the stairs, heading to the battlefield. Shikamaru and Hinata exchanged looks with each other. What do you think, Shikamaru? The Hyuga questioned. Naruto's already done 2 fights, so he's probably tired. And Gaara's going to be ruthless. Shikamaru sighed in response. He noticed that Sasuke was still in hearing distance from them, so he decided to pick his words carefully before speaking. But he does have that thing he could use to maybe give him a chance. Who knows? He just needs to be careful. The Nara then smiled at his teammate. But don't worry about him. Nothing's going to happen to Naruto. The proctor and some of the others will interfere if Gaara actually tries to do something. He'll be safe. You're right. Hinata sighed as she turned her attention to the central battlefield as she waited for her crush to get out there. Do your best, Naruto-kun. Naruto. Naruto turned his head, looking around the stairs for the source of the voice. Seeing nobody around him, the boy shrugged and continued his descent towards the arena. Naruto, we need to talk. Who's trying to talk to me? The Uzumaki questioned loudly, again scanning the area. Something about the voice sounded familiar, but he couldn't quite piece together who it was. Me, you idiot human. Realization quickly dawned on the blonde's face. He finally stared to notice the dark quality to the voice and realized that if nobody around him was trying to communicate, it must be something inside of him. Kyubi, is that you? How are you communicating with me? The blonde thought to himself, hoping that the fox would be able to hear him still. Recall what I said earlier when you were in that damn forest. The connection between us is stronger than it has ever been. As a result, the two of us can now communicate at will. Kyubi responded. So, the two of us can just talk to the other whenever we want? Naruto questioned. Yes. However, our communications will be brief. You're still a brat, and I don't want to talk to you particularly much. The Kyubi informed him with a snarl. However, you and I must talk about your upcoming fight with Shukaku's vessel. Naruto pieced together that Shukaku referred to the Ichibi. He sighed in response at the topic. Look, I don't like the guy and I'm not going to underestimate him. I know exactly what he's capable of, and I'm not going to let him do the same things to me. I'm going to make sure he loses and loses hard. The Uzumaki informed him. Believe me, that's fine by me. I'm more than willing to put Shukaku in his place. Having said that, you will not survive this fight alone. You must use my chakra, and use more than you usually use. Kyubi informed him. So you think Gaara is really that tough, huh? Naruto sighed. The boy? He's not strong at all. The fox scoffed in response. What's strong is Shukaku. And I can sense their connection. That damn Tanuki has him completely warped and under his influence. There's no doubt he's unstable and will use Shukaku's power. And, knowing him, he'll try and kill you the second he gets the chance. Lovely. Naruto rolled his eyes. Look, if I need your chakra, I'll use it. I'm not going to let Gaara kill me. I just want to fight him and kick his ass properly. If you're needed, then I'll use you. You're not strong or fast enough to kill him yourself. Believe me. You'll need my power. Just know to use it when it's time, otherwise I will forcefully send you the chakra. And if you lose control of yourself in the process, then it's your own damn fault for not listening to me. The fox snarled. After that warning, the fox ended its communication with Naruto. The Uzumaki remained still on the stairs for a few more seconds before he sighed and continued his walk. QB's right. Gaara's going to be a hell of an opponent. And I probably will need its power. But the Uzumaki thought of what Gaara did Dosu and to the genin in the Forest of Death. He tightened his fists at the thought. I want to give him a shot myself at first. I want to personally take him down. With that thought, Naruto continued on his descent towards the battlefield. The Suna boy is a concern to me. Ibiki spoke up to the group. Both Kurenai and Anko nodded in response at the scarred Tokubetsu Jonin's assessment. Every shinobi who had seen Gaara at work during the Chunin exams felt similarly. There was something off about the boy that seemed to unnerve those around him, even those who were much older and of much higher rank and skill than him. While Kurenai and Ibiki didn't know exactly why the boy had that effect on others, including themselves, Anko knew what it was about him that was so intimidating. Naruto mentioned he was the Ichibi Jinchuriki, and an unstable one at that. She recalled. She looked down towards the battlefield. Gaara was already standing there. He has used a variant of the Shunshin featuring his sand to arrive in the battlefield the second the match was called. She glared directly at the kid. Know your limits, Naruto, and be careful around him. Unconsciously, Anko tightened her fists as she thought about the potential outcomes of the upcoming fight. Although she was mostly positive and imagined scenarios where her student defeated Gaara, there were a few thoughts where she imagined Gaara trying to kill Naruto. If he tries anything on him, I'll fucking kill him myself. She resisted the urge to growl. Anko needed the match to start already. She needed to make sure that her student was going to be okay. The Ichibi, huh? Roshi mumbled as he observed Gaara. He's unstable. I've observed him during the preliminary exam. It seems as if the Bijū is in more control than the Jinchuriki. Han noted with a frown. That should not be the case. If the seal was placed properly on him, then he should have been able to resist the Ichibi's influence, unless he had a strong enough trigger to willingly work with the Bijū. Han's eyes narrowed and grew cold. It makes you wonder if the humans of Suna did anything to him. Han-sensei? Roto mumbled out his sensei's name in fear. Han, unconsciously, had been releasing killing intent. The Jonin sensei blinked in response before he quickly regained composure and bowed to his student. My apologies, Roto. You should really avoid using phrases like humans, Han. It unnerves people. Roshi noted with a shrug. He then noticed that Naruto was entering the battlefield. Well, guess it's time to see the fight. I wonder how a fight between the two Jinchuriki will go. Han's eyes were focused entirely on Naruto. He knew that Naruto was capable, but he still felt cautious. Gaara's mental stability had him worried. The boy also seemed too linked with the Ichibi. The Gobi Jinchuriki knew that Gaara was going to do everything he could to kill the blonde. Otuto, be safe. Han thought to himself as he mentally prepared himself to jump in and intervene if anything happened to Naruto. There he is, mother. The Kyubi Jinchuriki. Gaara informed his mother with glee as Naruto entered the stadium. And there he is. Kill him. Murder him. I want to actually taste that fox's blood. The Ichibi ordered Gaara. Once you kill him, the whole world will know exactly who you are. show them who Gaara is. Go and prove your worth. Yes, mother. The Suna Genin spoke aloud. He waited until Naruto approached him in the center of the arena, before speaking again, this time to the blonde. Mother wants your blood, Uzumaki. You and your mother can bite my ass. Naruto replied with a slight growl. Growl. I don't know what has you so blood-hungry, but I'm going to show you firsthand why that's wrong, why it's immoral to just kill people unnecessarily. I'm going to beat this lesson into you. Jinma noticed the hostility between the two genin. He also could feel traces of killing intent being released from both of them. Realizing that they were both ready and willing to fight, he quickly raised his hand. The fight between Sabako no Gaara and Uzumaki Naruto, begin. He declared, lowering his hand. Naruto made the first move against Gaara. He jumped backwards and tossed multiple shuriken at the red-headed genin. Instantly, sand shot out of the gourd on Gaara's back and intercepted the weapons, blocking them before they could reach Gaara. The Uzumaki then started to toss multiple more shuriken as he ran around Gaara in circles, attacking from different angles. No matter what angle Gaara was being attacked at, the sand blocked all of Naruto's weapons and kept the Suna Genin safe. During the attacks, Gaara didn't move at all. Once Naruto had finished tossing weapons, he finally moved his head to face him. Is that all? I was expecting more from you, he said monotonously. He raised his hand towards Naruto, causing his sand to shoot forward towards the blonde. Naruto quickly jumped out of the way, dodging Gaara's sand attack. The Suna Genin then made another gesture with his hand, causing the sand to change direction and try and attack Naruto once again. Realizing that the sand was going to continue following him, Naruto started to think of a way to get the sand to stop chasing him. How about I blow the sand away from me? He came up with an idea and proceeded to make a set of hand signs. Wind style, wind release stream. Naruto released a stream of wind directly towards the approaching sand. Sand. The sand split apart for a moment and flew backwards, away from the Uzumaki. In seconds, however, the sand started to overpower the wind and flew, once again, towards Naruto. My sand is stronger than that. It'll take much more to overpower it. Gaara spoke, letting out a dark, humorless laugh at Naruto's attempt to stop his sand. The Suna Genin raised his second hand, causing another blast of stream to charge at Naruto. The Uzumaki was now surrounded on both sides by incoming sand. Cursing, the Uzumaki quickly made a hand sign and disappeared with the Shunshin just as the sand blasts collided with each other. The Uzumaki then reappeared directly behind Gaara and attempted to punch him in the head. More sand from Gaara's gourd, however, came out and intercepted his fist. The sand then surrounded the hand, preventing the Uzumaki from jumping away. What? Naruto gasped. Fool. Gaara stated sharply as he made a pushing gesture, causing more sand to rush out of his gourd. He was preparing to crush Naruto underneath it. The Uzumaki quickly pulled out a kunai with his free hand and cut the sand that had entrapped his other hand. He managed to cut through it, freeing his hand. He then immediately jumped away just in time, as the sand came down to crush him. Naruto quickly jumped backwards, placing more distance. None of my attacks are working. Nothing is getting past that sand shield thing of his. Naruto cursed to himself. I need to find some way to get past it. Maybe through an underground attack? Earth-style, headhunter jutsu. Naruto quickly submerged himself underground. He remained under the earth for a few seconds while Gaara waited motionlessly for the blonde to attempt an attack. Finally, after a few more seconds, Naruto jumped out of the ground directly underneath Gaara, hoping that the sand wouldn't be able to block him at the angle he was trying to attack at. Unfortunately for him, his theory was incorrect. His hand was immediately caught by the sand before anything could happen. Gaara then stepped backwards slightly and made a gesture with his hand, causing the sand to pull Naruto out of the hole that he had created. You really are a fool. Gaara shook his head as he placed his hands together. Sand coffin. Sand burial. In a matter of seconds, Naruto was surrounded by a tomb of sand and was crushed underneath it. Gaara had expected blood to leak out of the sand, but he became curious when nothing leaked. He quickly dispersed the sand. The only thing that was present there was a cloud of smoke, the smoke that was generated when a shadow clone was destroyed. That trick from earlier, huh? Gaara realized. He remembered seeing Naruto create shadow clones while he was underneath the ground in his fight with Karatsuchi. It won't do him any good. Gaara was prepared to send his sand down the hole from the Naruto clone's attack and potentially attack Naruto from underneath the ground, but he didn't have to attack Naruto that way. The ground around him opened up and around 100 Naruto clones jumped out one after the other. They all surrounded the red-haired genin and made a set of hand signs. Wind style, great breakthrough. The 100 shadow clones released their own individual large gusts of winds directly at Gaara. The multiple blasts of wind collided at the same time. Gaara's sand shield attempted to block everything, but was unable to do so. There was too much concentrated wind flowing at him. As a result, some of the wind blasts actually hit the Suna genin, cutting him slightly. What? Gaara's eyes widened slightly. "Heh, there's my opening." Naruto realized, a smirk developing on his face. The original Naruto released his jutsu, while his clones continued their onslaught. Using his shunshin to travel fast, he moved directly in front of Gaara and delivered a punch to his face. Gaara was sent flying backwards upon impact and hit the ground hard. Naruto then quickly used the shunshin before his clone's wind attacks started to affect him. He teleported right behind where Gaara's body had fallen and picked him up. "Not so tough when you get past the sand shield, huh?" the Uzumaki questioned. That was a very good idea. With so many different attacks and force being applied on him, Gaara was unable to block every attack. Ibiki realized. A grin developed on his face. Naruto knows precisely how to handle him. He's a good fighter, yeah, but it's not over yet. Anko mumbled as she continued to focus on the fight. She was, indeed, proud of Naruto that he got past the sand shield, but she knew she couldn't celebrate just yet. Gaara had to have another set of tricks up his sleeve. The Tokubetsu Jonin just simply knew it. How did? Tamari blinked in surprise from her place in the audience. Gaara was hit. That can't be. She shook her head, trying to register what exactly happened. Naruto had managed to use wind, the very skill she uses, as a manner to get past Gaara's shield. How much force were all of the clones releasing when they used the great breakthrough? That shouldn't have been possible. Tamari, don't worry about Gaara. He'll be fine. Baki spoke to the girl sternly yet quietly, to avoid attention from the people around them. Focus. The signal should be soon. Tamari nodded in response to her sensei's words. She then turned her attention to the fight, while still paying attention for a signal. Naruto, while holding Gaara, was planning on punching the boy directly in the face again, while he still could and before the sand shield came back to him. Before his fist landed, however, he noticed that Gaara's body was falling apart. It started to lose its shape before it simply turned into a pile of sand that fell to the ground out of Naruto's hands. What? The Uzumaki's eyes widened. He turned his head to look for Gaara when he noticed something develop from the pile of sand. Gaara came out of the ground with a smirk on his face. He made a hand sign, causing all of the sand to rush over to him. It then scattered all across the battlefield into smaller blasts of sand. All of them were concentrated on destroying the clones. In a matter of seconds, Gaara had managed to destroy all of Naruto's clones, leaving him alone. The Suna genin gave the blonde a malicious grin. That was impressive, Uzumaki. I wonder what else you're capable of. He commented. Don't play with him for too long, destroy him already. I want him dead, by my hand. Shukaku roared within Gaara's head. Yes, mother. Gaara replied immediately as he made a hand sign. The sand that had scattered across the battlefield came back together again and formed a larger, circular shield around the genin. Gaara became completely enclosed in the sand, unable to be seen. What the? Naruto mumbled in response at the sight. Naruto stared at the giant shield cautiously, waiting for Gaara to attack him. A few seconds passed by before he realized that the boy was going to do nothing to him. The more time that passed by with Gaara inside the shield, the more Naruto was starting to get both suspicious and nervous. I need to bust him out of there somehow, he told himself as he made a hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto released a set of 10 clones that he sent forward to try and attack the giant shield of sand. The clones rushed it, preparing to punch the sand and knock it down. Just as they reached the shield, however, spikes developed on its edges and stabbed the clones. They all dispelled immediately. Naruto's eyes widened in response at the sight before he shook his head and started to make another set of hand signs. Wind style, great breakthrough. Naruto released a giant gust of wind at the shield. The Uzumaki poured in as much chakra as he could to try and blow the sand down. His effort failed, however, and the shield didn't even budge one bit. The Uzumaki's eyes widened once again at the sight. How is that thing so strong? Naruto mumbled to himself as he stared to breathe a little heavier. It's not that it's strong. It's that you're not using enough power. The Kyuubi spoke within Naruto's head. You're not using my power. That fool. Orochimaru hissed within his head. Is he trying to release Shukaku already? He's going against the plans that we've had. Kazekage-sama, are you alright? Hiruzen questioned the Kazekage. A moment of silence passed before the Kazekage nodded his head. I am alright, thank you. I am just surprised that Gaara is fighting so defensive. I was wanting to see my son do a little more than play safe. Understood. It's a cowardly style of combat. Effective, yeah, but cowardly. Anoki grumbled to himself. The Kazekage chuckled at Anoki's comment. He then turned his attention back to Gaara. A few seconds passed before his eyes started to wander across the stadium, looking for undercover Suna and Oto Shinobi amongst the guests that were watching. Our plan is still salvageable. We'll just need to make adjustments and act immediately. Orochimaru realized. Kabuto, send the signal. Alright, I see it your way, Kyuubi. I need chakra. Naruto admitted to the fox. Good. Use it well. I'm giving you just a little bit less than one tail's worth of chakra. This should be more than enough to destroy that stupid shield. The Kyuubi informed him. Naruto closed his eyes, trying to channel the fox's chakra and help the process go by faster. Immediately, he felt the chakra rush through him. His eyes started to become red and his teeth and fingernails started to sharpen. The boy also was starting to be surrounded by a red/orange chakra cloak. Repeat the step from earlier with your clones when you got past the first sand shield. Only this time, focus on hitting on one central area. That should destroy a part of his shield and give you the opening you need. The Kyuubi advised. Understood. Naruto nodded in response as he made a hand sign again. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto created another set of 100 clones. All clones proceed to charge at Gaara's sand shield and jumped in the air. They all then made the same set of hand signs. Wind style, great breakthrough. Each clone released a massive gust of wind directly at the center of the sand shield. Despite the fact that they were all being targeted on one area, the wind was so intense that it caused a heavy breeze to develop throughout the area. Everyone in the stands felt the breeze. The concentrated strength of the wind, powered by Kyuubi's chakra and magnified by the 100 clones attacking one area, slowly started to do damage to the shield. At the center of the shield, it was starting to crack. The original Naruto quickly saw his opening and proceeded to charge. Just as Naruto reached the shield, the wind managed to destroy the shield slightly, creating a hole. Gaara was now visible to the outside the world. The boy's eyes were closed as he was making a series of hand signs. The Uzumaki continued to rush through the hole and used the claws that came from Kyuubi's chakra to attack Gaara. He managed to cut at Gaara in the chest. Although the cut wasn't deep enough to kill him, it was deep enough to cause the Suna Genin to bleed. Gaara's eyes widened immediately as pain coursed through his body, a feeling he had never experienced before. His eyes slowly lowered to Naruto's claw-like fingernails and how they had managed to cut him deeply. Blood. That's blood, that's... Gaara mumbled to himself before he started to scream loudly. That's my blood. Ninja Art, Temple of Nirvana Jutsu. Yakushi Kabuto, within the audience of the Chunin exams, casted a genjutsu that scattered all across the stands. Immediately, people began to see white, illusionary feathers floating around that managed to put them asleep. It was an act that did not go unnoticed by the Suna and Oto shinobi within the stadium. That was the signal. The invasion against Konoha was now underway. Chapter 29, The Invasion Begins. After attacking Gaara, the sand shield that surrounded him fell apart. The Suna Genin staggered backwards in pain, still screaming. Naruto jumped backwards to put some distance between the two. He then focused his eyes solely on Gaara, waiting for the red head to make a move and trying to decide how his next attack should go. His focus on Gaara was broken at the sound of an explosion. The Uzumaki turned his head in the direction of the noise, and his eyes widened in fear. What the... Naruto was barely able to speak at the sight. The explosion had occurred within the stands of the stadium. Most of the people were asleep and unable to do them. Only a few were awake. They were currently being engaged in combat by a group of Suna and Oto shinobi, all of whom were in uniform and equipped to do battle, as if they had planned to fight. What's happening? Naruto's thoughts were interrupted as he was forcefully knocked back further by a powerful gust of wind. He was sent flying into a nearby wall and winced in pain. The Sunagakure Jonin, Baki, had jumped down onto the battlefield where he had previously been, along with Tamari and Kankuro. Damn it, Gaara. He has no patience whatsoever. Baki grumbled to himself as he studied the condition of the Jinchuriki. He's useless like this. Tamari. Kankuro. Both Suna Genin saluted the Jonin, showing him that he had their full attention. Take him away from the stadium. Find some secluded place where he can calm himself down. Once he's recovered from his pain and shock, get out of there. Let him release Shukaku. Yes, sir. Both Suna Genin nodded as they grabbed their brother and picked him up. Naruto pulled himself off the ground and recovered from the attack on him in time to see Tamari and Kankuro use the Shunshin to get themselves, and the dazed Gaara, out of the area. Captain Baki. A Suna Chunin called out as he jumped down to the battlefield. I've received word from the groups around the village. The invasion is underway in all areas of the village. Invasion? There. Naruto's eyes widened even further at the proclamation. Good. Baki nodded his head. I have new orders for you, Daichi. Tamari and Kankuro were tasked to assist with Gaara and get him somewhere safe so he can calm down. I'm worried they'll be ambushed. Join up with them and make sure they can complete their task. As you command. The Suna Chunin, Daichi, nodded as he vanished, using the Shunshin as well. Once his subordinate had left, Baki turned his attention towards Uzumaki Naruto. He noticed the blonde was now standing on his feet after being knocked away by his own wind-style ninjutsu. He seemed, for the most part, unharmed. The boy was also the reason for Gaara's current condition and actually managed to physically harm the redhead, a task that some shinobi in Suna considered impossible. With that in mind, the Suna Jonin glared at the boy as he started making hand signs rapidly. While you did manage to impress me with your little battles today so far, especially with Gaara, I'm afraid you're on the wrong side. Baki commented coldly. Don't take this too personally. Just die. Baki immediately finished his hand signs and released a large gust of hurricane-like winds directly towards Naruto. The blonde had prepared to jump away in time before the attack struck him, but the wind was intercepted before it could reach him. The proctor for the exam, Shiranui Genma, had jumped in the way and deflected the wind with an earth-style ninjutsu, creating a giant pillar from the ground that stopped Baki's attack. Uzumaki Naruto, are you all right? He questioned seriously. I'm fine. Naruto replied as his eyes continued to scan the area. What's going on? Are we being invaded? Is this war? Afraid so. Genma shook his head in response. I know you've been working hard during the exam so far, but you're gonna have to work even harder. I have a mission for you, a mission for our village's safety. Due to his heritage and recent studies of genjutsu with Kakashi, Uchiha Sasuke noticed the genjutsu that was unleashed on the stands in the stadium the moment it was released. Unlike Hinata and Shikamaru, he made a hand sign and dispelled the genjutsu before it could affect him. Sasuke remained awake and watched everything around him. So, this is what war is like, huh? Sasuke commented quietly to himself as he saw Konoha shinobi fight against Suna and Oto shinobi. There were many theories that Sasuke was aware of about the reasoning behind his brother's actions during the massacre. Although Sasuke did know his true motives, one theory he heard made a lot of sense. Itachi went insane after being exposed to the evils of the Third Great Shinobi World War at such a young age. It was only a theory, but Sasuke thought it did make some sense. As a result, he did not have any enjoyment at the idea of going to war. This environment creates people like Itachi. I'll destroy all who are trying to create people like him. The Uchiha snarled within his head. On instinct, he was about to jump away and join his sensei to fight against the shinobi. He then stopped and looked at the two sleeping genin around him, Hinata and Shikamaru. Sasuke then quickly brought his fingers to their heads and dispelled the genjutsu, waking them up. What's going on? Shikamaru asked upon waking up. After a very brief explanation that Konoha was being invaded, Hinata looked downward in time to see Naruto get nearly hit by a wind-style ninjutsu. Her eyes widened in panic. Naruto-kun. She nearly screamed as she, without a second thought, jumped down to the battlefield to help out her friend and crush. This is bad. This is really bad. The village is going to need help, Naruto's going to need help. Realizing that his friend was in danger, Shikamaru rushed over to the edge of the balcony to jump down and help his teammate. He, however, winced in pain upon reaching the edge. His body was still sore. Damn it. In this condition, I'll just be a hindrance. Shikamaru, if you want to help them, then you'll need some of these. Sasuke spoke up as he pulled out a small container of pills and held it out towards the Nara. He realized immediately what they were and took the container. He then popped open the cap. Soldier pills, right? Yes. If you really are running that low on chakra and stamina, then you'll need those if you want to help out at all. The Uchiha informed him. He then started to head out of the area. I'm going to help out Kakashi-sensei. You stick with Naruto and Hinata and make sure they're okay. Okay. You all then should help with the fighting. We need to do everything we can to end this invasion fast. With those words, Sasuke jumped off, heading directly for his sensei, ready to do battle. Shikamaru, upon listening to Sasuke, grabbed 2 pills from the container and took them. Once he started feeling the effects, he jumped down to meet up with his teammates. Unlike the people around them, Han and Roshi both noticed the Temple of Nirvana Jutsu and dispelled the genjutsu, remaining fully awake. They quickly became aware of what was happening. Suna and Oto were invading Konoha. Of course, there's an invasion. It's been too long since the last war. People really can't just enjoy peace, can they? Roshi shook his head in anger and disappointment. It's human nature. It's as if the species can't thrive without something like this. Han noted with a scowl on his face as he quickly assessed the situation around him. The Gobi Jinchuriki noticed that the Ichibi Jinchuriki, along with his siblings, had fled the area. He also noticed that their sensei had attempted to try and kill Naruto with a wind-style jutsu, only to be intercepted by the proctor of the exam. Despite his improvements in his attitude and relationships, Han had no loyalty towards Konoha, and he was still uncertain about many things about his faith in humanity, amongst other things. One thing was certain to him, however: Uzumaki Naruto was somebody he was close to. The boy possessed people that truly cared for him despite his Jinchuriki status, and the village of Naruto, and these important people of him, was being attacked. Their lives were being threatened. They won't touch him or this village. I won't let them. Han mentally told himself. The IWA Jonin put his fingers on the forehead of Roto, who fell asleep to the genjutsu. The civilian-born genin quickly woke up and started to look around the area in confusion and fright. What's going on? Roto asked, surprised at all of the fighting. Konoha's being invaded. It's not safe right now. Han answered simply. He then pointed a finger towards Risho, who was still asleep from the genjutsu. Roto, grab Risho and take him somewhere safe, wherever Karatsuchi is. He's in no condition to be fighting, and neither is she. I need you to work together with any capable Konoha shinobi in the area around them, and keep your teammates safe. Protect Risho and Karatsuchi? Me? Roto's eyes widened at the request. He had always considered himself the weak link amongst his teammates. Being forced into the responsibility of taking care of them, in the middle of an invasion, was a big shock to him. It took a few seconds before the initial fear and surprise faded, and he was able to look at his sensei with determination in his eyes. I will. Good. Please, be careful, Roto. Han requested his student. Roshi and I will be assisting Konoha in actual battle. Stay hidden and stay safe. Use all of your training and stealth to get you and Risho out of here undetected. Do whatever it takes to keep yourself and your teammates alive. Roto nodded and quickly picked up Risho's body over his shoulders. He then made a hand sign, causing himself and the sleeping Kurogane shinobi to turn invisible. He then hurried out of the area, making sure to avoid any of the battles going on around them. You know, we have no orders to get involved, right? This could go against Inoki's wishes. Roshi pointed out to his fellow Jinchuriki. I realize that, but I'm not going to wait for any orders. Naruto is in trouble, and there is an invasion underway. I will do what I can to help. Han noted as he jumped down from the stands to join up with the Uzumaki. I wasn't saying that we shouldn't do anything. I'm just a little apprehensive about pissing off Inoki too much. Roshi commented, more to himself than his friend. But I'm not going to let you risk your life in this fight alone. If you're going in, then I'm going with you. With those words, Roshi jumped down along with his fellow Jinchuriki. As the two landed on the ground, the older, red-haired man turned his head slightly to check up on the Tsuchikage, and see if he could gauge any reaction from him about whether or not they were acting against Iwa's wishes. Instead of seeing the Tsuchikage, along with the other Kage, Roshi saw a giant purple barrier form around the Hokage's balcony. He also saw a Konoha ANBU agent attempt to jump into the barrier, only to have himself burned to death upon contact with the barrier. The Yanbi Jinchuriki's eyes widened as his mind processed the sight. What the hell is going on here? Immediately after the signal was released, the Kazekage jumped backwards and stood directly behind the Hokage, holding a kunai knife with his right hand. He used his left hand to make a hand sign, knocking back all of the bodyguards of the Tsuchikage and Hokage off the balcony with a powerful gust of wind. Once the Kage were isolated on the balcony, the Kazekage's bodyguards revealed themselves to be 4 Otogekure shinobi, who used the ninja art, for flames formation to trap Inoki and Hiruzen within a purple barrier of flames. What the hell? Both Inoki's eyes and mind were running rampant at all of the chaos around him. He studied everything intently and braced himself to make a move and fight. What's going on here? Inoki-san, I regret not letting you know sooner of my plans. I had so many things that I needed to get done, that I simply didn't have the time to talk to you. The Kage noted, his voice changing into a more sinister, darker tone. But I'm sure you can tell what's going on right now. And I'm sure you know exactly what must be done. The man then brought the edge of the kunai closer to Hiruzen's neck. Isn't it about time IWA got revenge against Konoha for the last Shinobi World War? Together, with Suna and Oto, we can burn this village to the ground and get revenge. Quite hypocritical of you to offer revenge for the Third Shinobi World War. If that's the case, you'd need to die for all of the damage you did. Orochimaru. Hiruzen spat out the name of the Kazekage. The Kazekage used his left hand to pull off the mask and the Kage hat, revealing his true identity to the Kage in front of him. You did know about the invasion, didn't you, Sarutobi-sensei? You knew this whole time. Orochimaru noted as a grin developed on his face. Quite interesting. I wonder what clued you in, Sarutobi-sensei. Hiruzen ignored the words from his former student and turned his head to face the Tsuchikage. Inoki, I wished such an event didn't occur during your stay in Konoha. I wished for this to be a peaceful event, for the two of us and our villages. But sadly, that didn't come to pass. The Sandaime Hokage stated. It's time that Konoha and IWA had moved past our history and joined together to create a bond that will protect both of our villages. I ask that you and your village with the creation of this bond, by driving out a certain snake from this village. Surely you don't believe such a bond could be created, Sarutobi-sensei. Orochimaru taunted, bringing the edge of the kunai closer to Hiruzen's neck. Time does not erode the events of the past. Nothing can change all of the damage Konoha has done to IWA. The Sannin took a moment to look towards the Tsuchikage. Inoki-san, the two of us can create a real partnership, beneficial to us. We can start by destroying Konoha and the Hokage together. Inoki remained silent for a few seconds as he processed exactly what the two men were trying to pitch to him. Among all of the possible emotional reactions he was experiencing at the situation, he was furious more than anything else. Both of them knew this was happening. Orochimaru had planned this invasion and Hiruzen was aware of it. But they both kept me in the dark, just assuming I would be okay with working with them in the end. He realized. Bah. His eyes narrowed in anger, disgusted at the thought that both men assumed that they could earn his trust so easily with a few words. Despite his anger, Inoki was not somebody who let his emotions cloud his better judgment. The man was aware of genuine facts. The Third Shinobi World War exhausted IWA, and he, as the Tsuchikage, wanted to do everything he could to prevent another war like that from happening to his village. He knew that Hiruzen wanted their villages to become allies. The Sandaime Tsuchikage was also aware of the desires of some of his own shinobi, such as Han, Roshi, and his own granddaughter. Times had changed. While the events of the war and all of the lives that had been lost would never leave Iwa's heart, they could do the part to try and start over and look away from the past. Even a shinobi like his granddaughter, who was the biggest patriot for IWA he had ever seen, was willing to vouch for Konoha and desire an alliance with them. If she could be willing to, then so could the rest of IWA at some point, and so could he. Besides, if I'm supposed to be remembering what happened during the war, I can also remember some of the shit you did to us, Orochimaru. Inoki grinded his teeth together as he recalled the damage the snake Sannin had done in battle. He recalled with disgust all of the bodies he had found had been used for Orochimaru's experiments. With every thought he put into it, the decision was clear to Inoki. Let this be the day where IWA and Konoha stand together as one. Inoki spoke quietly before shouting out, loud enough for all IWA shinobi in the area to hear. IWA Shinobi. Defend the village alongside the Konoha Shinobi. Although no one within the barrier could directly see what was going on, they all knew the result of Inoki's declaration. The Iwagakure shinobi that had been within the audience were now joining the Konoha shinobi side by side in battle. Inoki. Thank you. A small smile developed on Hiruzen's face. You disappoint me, Inoki. I let you remain within the barrier, because I assumed you would have enjoyed the thought of destroying Konoha with me. Orochimaru commented. Despite his words, the Sannin still appeared to be amused more than anything else. Don't make assumptions about me, Orochimaru. Leaving me in here was a mistake, and because of it, you are going to die today. The Tsuchikage hissed. Immediately after the Tsuchikage finished speaking, Hiruzen jumped away from the Sannin, freeing himself from the man's hold. Once he had placed distance between himself and his former student, the Hokage quickly pulled off his robes, revealing a black combat suit with green gauntlets on his right wrist, forearm, and shoulders. He had on a black, armored hood and was wearing a scroll on his back. Once he had taken off the robes, the scroll fell to the ground and burst, creating a cloud of smoke. Once the smoke was cleared, Jiraiya appeared where the scroll had been, prepared to fight. Ah, and Jiraiya is here as well. You had him disguised as a scroll underneath your robes. Interesting. You really did prepare for a fight with me. Orochimaru commented. Once again, he seemed more amused than upset or angry. I wouldn't miss the opportunity to help Sensei and the Tsuchikage take you down. Jiraiya spat out, glaring at his former teammate. Orochimaru, this ends now. Oh, it will. But I don't like the odds of a 3 versus 1 fight. The Snake Sannin noted as he immediately started to make hand signs. How about I make this fight a little more fair? Upon finishing his hand signs, 3 coffins appeared from underneath the balcony. One of the coffins was marked with the kanji for earth and one while the other 2 were marked with the kanji for fire. One of them also was marked with the kanji for 1 and the other possessed the kanji for 2. Orochimaru then proceeded to make another hand sign and cause another coffin to rise up, but Sarutobi immediately tossed a series of kunai at it, preventing it from rising. So, you prevented that one from rising. Oh well. You didn't react fast enough to stop these. Orochimaru commented with a sinister grin. The coffins opened and fell to the ground, revealing 3 figures inside. In the coffin marked with the kanji for earth was a man with long, blackish gray hair. He had a mustache and a long, pointy beard and was wearing a silver-colored kimono with wide sleeves. Underneath the kimono was mesh armor that extended all the way down his legs and arms. In the coffin marked with the kanji of fire and one was a man with waist-length black hair and tan skin. He wore dark red armor over his body and had on with black pants. In the coffin marked with the kanji of fire and 2 was a man with white, shaggy hair and had red markings underneath his eyes. He wore blue armor over his body with black pants and also wore facial armor that covered his ears and the side of his face. There was also white fur on his armor that covered his neck. All 3 men slowly walked forward after being released from their coffins and looked forward. They all possessed black, dead eyes that showed that they were not from the land of the living. Hashirama. Tobarama, my senseis. Hiruzen gasped at the sight of the men in red and blue armor. Orochimaru, you really perfected that jutsu, huh? Jiraiya glared at his former teammate. Perfected? No, there's still room for improvement on my part. But I suppose the results are more than satisfactory at the moment, wouldn't you agree, Jiraiya? Orochimaru replied with a grin on his face. Kamizuru Ishikawa. Inoki's mouth was wide open at the sight of the showdown Tsuchikage. This isn't possible. This can't be possible. The Sandaime Tsuchikage soon recovered from his shock and proceeded to glare at Orochimaru. What kind of trick is this, Snake? Trick? This is no trick. This is the Edo Tensei. It a jutsu designed by the Nidaime Hokage, Senju Tobarama himself. I figured he, along with his brother and the founder of Iwagakure, would enjoy seeing the jutsu in action. Orochimaru explained with a chuckle. Anyway, the numbers have changed a little in my favor. I suppose now we can begin our fight. What do you need me to do? Naruto asked Genma seriously upon hearing his order. I don't know what their purpose is, but those 3 Suna genin are needed for something. Especially Gaara. I need you to follow them and take them down and prevent them from doing what they are trying to do. Genma ordered. I don't have time to leave. There's a lot of fighting going here, so I'm going to stay here and do what I can. You look like you were going head-to-head against Gaara, so I think I can trust you to be able to stop whatever Suna has planned with him. I understand. I can do it. Naruto nodded in understanding. Naruto-kun. Naruto turned his head at the sound of the voice. Hinata jumped down to the ground and reached him. Shortly after her, Shikamaru followed behind, seemingly rejuvenated after his fight with Sasuke. Are you all right? Hinata asked frantically. She was thanking whatever god existed in their world that had managed to keep him safe from Baki's last attack. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Naruto told her confidently. But right now, we don't have much time to waste and worry about each other. Tell me about it. The village is in danger. Shikamaru mumbled as he reached his friends. The Nara's eyes were focused on the battles that were occurring around them between Konoha/Iwa and Suna/Odo Shinobi. If your friends are able to, maybe they can help you in your mission. Genma suggested to the members of Team 3. The Proctor Jonin then noticed a Rouge Odo Shinobi about to attack a few of the unconscious members of the audience. He also noticed that nobody was seemingly aware of his attack. Shit. Naruto, I'm counting on you to complete your mission. Upon repeating his order, Genma jumped off to confront the Odo Shinobi before he could kill off any of the unconscious shinobi. He left the 3 genin members of Team 3 alone. Both Shikamaru and Hinata seemed confused at the mention of a mission. What mission? Hinata voiced her confusion. Whatever it is, perhaps we could be of assistance. Upon saying those words, Han and Roshi arrived at the battlefield of the stadium. The 2 Iwa Jinchuriki were looking around the area, preparing for any potential conflict to occur. Han and I. Naruto exclaimed in surprise upon seeing the Gobi Jinchuriki. He then turned his head towards the redhead and gave him a look of confusion. And, nice to finally meet you, kid. I've been wanting to meet the Kyubi Jinchuriki for a while. Name's Roshi. I'm the container of the Yanbi. He greeted. Naruto's eyes widened at the information and was about to speak to the redhead, but Roshi shook his head and continued to speak again. But right now's not the best time for introductions now, is it? If you got a mission to keep your village safe, then we got to get moving and do it. Naruto nodded his head, and a look of seriousness and determination filled his face. We have to catch up to Gaara and his teammates before they can get away. Realization dawned on his face as to what the intent probably was. I think they're going to try and release the Ichibi. The eyes of the shinobi around him widened. Both Shikamaru and Hinata seemed nervous and terrified at the idea of Bijū being released into the village. Han and Roshi, although not as nervous as the genin around them, realized the severity of the situation. As a result, they looked forward with blank, serious stares. I'm a decent chakra sensor and can sense the movements of the Ichibi Jinchuriki. I know what direction he is heading in. If we hurry, we can catch up to them and prevent the release of the Ichibi. Han stated. We don't have time to waste. You all need to follow me. Han immediately started to run off, rushing towards the stadium exit. Naruto, Hinata, Shikamaru, and Roshi followed behind, trying to keep up with the Iwa Jinchuriki. They're trying to catch Gaara, huh? Baki realized as he watched the group about to leave the stadium. The Suna Jonin proceeded to make a series of hand signs. Not on my watch. They'll all die before they can get out of here. Before Baki could release his jutsu and attack the group of shinobi, a large fireball flew directly at him. The Jonin was forced to cancel his attack and jump out of the way to avoid contact. After the failed attack, Anko jumped down into the battlefield, glaring at him. Mitarashi Anko, the famed snake mistress of Konoha. Baki recognized the woman. He gritted his teeth, realizing that she wasn't going to be somebody he could blow off. She was going to confront him and, unfortunately, prevent him from attacking the group that was heading towards Gaara. Baki, one of the highest-ranking shinobi within Sunagakure. Anko nearly growled as she spat out his name. Your village became a part of my shit list the second this invasion started. But you just tried to attack my students, and for that, I'll personally see to it that your body is nothing but ash once I'm through with you. Quite big talk. The Suna Jonin scoffed. I hate arrogance. Let's see if you can actually back up some of your words. I'll do just that. Anko replied, cracking her knuckles slightly. Upon exiting the stadium, Naruto, Hinata, Shikamaru, Han, and Roshi began their pursuit of Gaara and his teammates into the forest of Konoha. They noticed that the village was, indeed, under attack, and some of the important buildings of the village were under assault from Suna and Oto shinobi. Naruto and his teammates wanted to intervene and do something to stop the attacks, but they knew the mission that they were assigned to. Therefore, they continued on their pursuit with the Iwa Jonin to reach Gaara. How much further ahead is he? Naruto asked Han. Not much, thankfully. If we continue at this pace, we will surely reach him. The Gobi Jinchuriki spoke up. Almost immediately after he finished, though, he felt another set of chakra signatures. Although, we have a problem. What's going on now? Shikamaru questioned. I can sense 9 different chakra signatures coming in our direction. At some point, they'll intercept us. Han answered, scowling slightly. Judging from the signatures, they are all around Chunin level in strength. Only one of them is Jonin level. Well, they don't seem that special then, if only one is at the Jonin level. Roshi chuckled in response. Perhaps I could do you all a favor, and get rid of them by myself. After finishing his answer, Roshi stopped moving and remained motionless on a tree branch. He turned his attention and took a deep breath, preparing for a battle. Han, along with the genin of Konoha's Team 3, turned their attention to the Yonbi Jinchuriki. Are you sure that's wise, Roshi-san? 9 against 1 does not sound safe at all. Hinata spoke up, wanting to discourage the red-headed Iwa shinobi from going against that many shinobi alone. Have some faith in me. I've been a shinobi longer than your parents have been alive, I bet. Not to brag or anything, but they're probably going to need more than 9 shinobi to stop me. Roshi declared confidently. His face then became more serious as he looked at the group. Besides, you all don't have the time to get distracted. The goal is to capture that Gaara kid above all else, so you can't be wasting your time with some random shinobi. I'm just going to hold this group back so they don't slow you all down. The determination and seriousness of his voice showed the group that Roshi wasn't going to change his mind. With that realization, all of them nodded. I know we don't know each other well, yet, but you're a Jinchuriki like me, and I want to meet you properly. Be careful, old man. Naruto requested the Yonbi Jinchuriki. Old man? Just you wait. This old man will be just fine. You and the rest are the ones who need to be careful. Roshi laughed in response. Roshi, Naruto's right. Stay safe. Han repeated Naruto's request. The Yonbi Jinchuriki immediately stopped laughing and exchanged a look between himself and the Gobi Jinchuriki. A second passed before he nodded to his friend. I'll be fine. Promise. And I'll catch up with you guys once I'm through with these shinobi. Roshi stated. You all just hurry on ahead and catch the Ichibi Jinchuriki. The group finally nodded before they continued on their pursuit, heading in the direction of Gaara and his teammates. Roshi remained on the tree branch as he started to make hand signs in preparation for their pursuers. A minute passed before 8 Otogekure shinobi appeared from the trees. Roshi took note that one of the shinobi Han sensed, the 9th member that appeared to be Jonin level and skill, was missing. He then decided to assess the skills of the 8 present shinobi in front of them. To his surprise, it was nearly impossible for him to find a difference between any of the shinobi. They all looked the same, possessed the same equipment and combat uniforms, and didn't appear any different in strength from one another. Upon this realization, Roshi started to laugh again. I've written enough novels in my lifetime to know that these men aren't anything special. They're nothing more than filler characters, waiting to be killed by the power of the author. He told himself, grinning. And as an author, I'm more than willing to do what needs to be done and kill them off. This is a conflict between Konoha and the forces of Suna and Odo. IWA doesn't need to be involved, old man. I'd suggest just getting out of our way. One of the Odo shinobi informed him. Heh. You all think you're worth more than you actually are. I can already tell that you are nothing but pawns to your leader. Roshi continued to laugh, amused at the Otogekure shinobi in front of him. His laughter soon stopped and he looked at them intently, radiating killing intent. Let me show you exactly how unimportant you really are. With bubbling rage, the 8 Otogekure shinobi charged Roshi, prepared to fight. Roshi, in response, started to make hand signs. Kankuro-sama. Tamari-sama. Kankuro and Tamari looked back in surprise at the sound of the voice. Daichi, a Sunagekure Chunin and Chakra sensor, was rushing up behind them. The man was breathing heavily, showing that he had worked hard to catch up to the 2 siblings. Daichi, what are you doing here? You should be helping in the invasion forces with the rest of the shinobi. Tamari informed him sharply. Change of plans. Captain Baki wished for me to accompany you 3 and help you get Gaara to safety. He predicted that you would both be pursued and could use some extra assistance, and he was correct in his assumption. Daichi replied. Immediately, Kankuro and Tamari paled at the Chunin's words. They were both silent for a few seconds before Kankuro gained his voice back. How many shinobi are pursuing us? And how far away are they? He asked. I sense 5, for chakra signatures following us. One of them seems to have stopped moving. Daichi shrugged in response. Nevertheless, 4 are still following, and 2 of them have extremely high chakra signatures. At the pace they are going, they will eventually catch up to us. Shit. Gaara needs to recover more. A battle occurring around him right now could only make things worse. Kankuro hissed at the realization. Then I'll stall them. Tamari suggested firmly. Tamari, what are you suggesting? 4 against 1 is not good odds at all. Kankuro nearly shouted at his sister. Probably not, but I can stall them a little bit. You 2 keep moving and get Gaara away. That is our orders and it's what needs to be done for Suna. I'll hold them back for you 2. The blonde exclaimed. She then loosened her grip on Gaara, allowing Daichi to come and take her place in carrying him. Understood. Kankuro sighed, shaking his head slightly at his sister's actions. Don't die, Tamari. Suna will survive today, no matter what. I need to make sure that you do as well. I'll be fine. She reassured her brother. Kankuro nodded before he and Daichi, carrying Gaara, continued to rush ahead through the forest. Tamari waited on the tree branches, looking for their pursuers. She gripped her fan tightly in her hands, waiting to attack at the first sight of Konoha shinobi. A few seconds before she saw the rustling of leaves in the trees in front of her, showing that a group of people were approaching. Tamari's eyes widened and she immediately swung her hand, creating a large gust of wind at the rustling leaves. Han, along with Team 3, jumped through the leaves and saw the approaching gust of wind. They were forced to jump out of the way before being struck and knocked back by the wind. All 4 members landed on nearby tree branches and saw Tamari, standing on a branch higher than the branches they were on. Tamari. Hinata recognized the girl as the kunoichi who fought against Karatsuchi in the preliminary exams. I'm not going to let any of you get closer to catching Gaara. Your pursuit ends here. Tamari declared sharply as she swung her fan once again, creating another large gust of wind in their direction. Once again, Han and the genin of Team 3 were forced to jump away to separate branches. After they evaded her attack, Shikamaru spoke up with a sigh. It's obvious that she's just trying to get us to waste time. So, we shouldn't waste our time. Only one of us should fight her, and I'll volunteer to do that. Shikamaru answered. Naruto and Hinata, both remembering Shikamaru's exhaustion after his fight with Sasuke, looked at the Nara in surprise. Are you going to be okay, Shikamaru-kun? Hinata asked nervously. I'll be fine. I had a little something to keep me going. The Nara noted, taking out the soldier pill bottle Sasuke had given him. He then tossed the bottle towards Hinata. You should take one too, by the way. I'm sure your fight with your cousin wore you out, at least a little bit. Hinata looked a little hesitant at Shikamaru, but seemed to accept his answer. She nodded, agreeing with Shikamaru as she took one of the soldier pills from the bottle. Shikamaru, you sure about this? We could all work together and take her out quickly. Naruto suggested. Not quick enough. We're already wasting time just arguing about this. Gaara's getting away. You 3 need to get out of here and catch up to him already. The Nara exclaimed. He is correct. Naruto, Hinata-san, we should be going. Han spoke to the other 2 members of Team 3. I can sense the presence of the Ichibi Jinchuriki getting further away. We need to keep going with our pursuit. Naruto realized that both Han and Shikamaru were right. The 2 genin gave Shikamaru one last look, before they finally spoke up. Be careful, Shikamaru. If something happens to you, I'll kill you myself. Naruto spoke up with a small smirk on his face. Nothing'll happen to me. I'll be fine. Shikamaru replied with a smirk of his own. Now you 3 need to go. Han continued with his pursuit through the forest towards Gaara, with Naruto and Hinata following behind. At the sight of their movement, Tamari prepared to swing her fan again at the retreating shinobi. She stopped, however, at the sight of kunai knives approaching her. She used her fan to deflect the weapons, and then looked in the direction they had come from. Shikamaru was now approaching her, holding another kunai in his hands. Your fight is going to be with just me. Don't even think about going after them. He informed her sharply as he tossed the kunai knife at her. If you want to fight, then so be it. Tamari nearly shouted as she deflected the knife, once again with her fan. I couldn't keep them all busy. Kankuro, be safe. They're still coming after us. Tamari-sama was only able to keep one of them. 3 are still following. Daichi informed Kankuro. Shit. Kankuro continued to curse. Perhaps I should follow in Tamari-sama's example, and hold them back, and let you keep moving on with Gaara. The Suna Chunin offered. No. That'll be my job. You're a faster shinobi than I am. Kankuro stated with a sigh. The Suna puppeteer stopped moving and waited on one of the tree branches. He then made a hand gesture towards Daichi, encouraging him to leave. Just keep moving. I'll hold these 3 back as long as I can. Get Gaara out of here though. Will do. Daichi nodded as he continued to move, carrying Gaara on his back. Kankuro watched the Suna Chunin leave the area with his brother for a moment before he turned his attention forward, waiting for the pursuing shinobi to arrive. He released his puppet, Karasu, from the bindings on his back and prepared to strike. A few seconds passed before Han, along with Naruto and Hinata, arrived in the area. Kankuro, upon seeing them, made a gesture with his hands, causing his puppet to release a poisonous bomb from its mouth directly at the group. It exploded directly in front of them, releasing the poisonous gas. Wind style, great breakthrough. Naruto breathed out a large gust of wind. Naruto's jutsu blew away Kankuro's poison. Once the gust of wind and the poison clouds were sent away from the area, Naruto, Hinata, and Han turned to stare at the Suna Puppeteer. Humph. Now you're sticking behind, I see. Naruto glared at Kankuro. The reason you didn't fight today in the exams was because of the invasion, wasn't it? That was definitely part of the reason. Kankuro answered as he returned Naruto's glare with one of his own. Don't take this all too personally, kid. I'm following orders, just like you are. The Uzumaki gritted his teeth in response. The Suna Puppeteer was right, the shinobi of Suna and Oto were just following orders. He couldn't hate them for that. However, that didn't mean he had to be happy they were attacking his village, and that he wasn't going to do whatever he could to end the fighting. Naruto cracked his knuckles before he started to speak. Don't take it too personally, then, when dash. Naruto-kun, you and Han-san should continue moving. I'll fight him myself. Hinata interrupted her crush. Ha! Hinata? The Uzumaki looked at his friend in surprise. It's just like Shikamaru-kun and Roshi-san said. Gaara is getting further away, and you can't afford to let go too far ahead. You need to catch up to him. Hinata continued as she reached for her bow and an arrow. The arrow she chose was similar to one from her fight with Niji and was, therefore, marked with an explosive tag. I'll fight and keep him distracted from you guys. Hinata prepared her bow and fired the arrow at Kankuro. The Suna Puppeteer and his puppet quickly moved out of the way and avoided the resulting explosion. Immediately after her explosion, Hinata turned her attention to Naruto and Han. You guys need to go. She informed them sharply. The Hyuga noticed that Naruto still seemed a little uneasy about leaving another of his friends behind. Using the adrenaline that was rushing through her body thanks to the invasion, Hinata moved over to Naruto and gave him a soft kiss on the cheek, causing his eyes to widen exponentially. Once she finished the kiss, she looked him in the eye and gave him a smile. I'll be fine. Promise. Hinata told him. Keep that promise for me then. I don't know what I would do anything happened to you. Naruto finally answered, returning her smile with one of his own. With those words, Naruto and Han continued in their pursuit of Gaara. Hinata remained in the area, alone. She began looking for signs of Kankuro. Are you really going to let my friends just get away? Hinata asked aloud. She activated her Byakugan and proceeded to locate her opponent. She turned her head in his direction once she found him. There's no point in trying to stop them. I can tell you'd get in the way. Kankuro responded. Hinata fired another arrow in his direction, but her attack was blocked. Kankuro and his puppet jumped out of hiding and stood atop a branch, ready to fight. I just have to hope I stalled you all enough for Gaara to recover. If he has, then honestly, your friends are going to die. I won't let that happen. Hinata replied, determination filling her eyes as she prepared another arrow. I can feel it. Can't you, Gaara? That damn fox is coming this way, and he's brought our horse brother Kokuo. We can prove our superiority over two other demons. We can prove your worth over them. Shukaku exclaimed within the mind of his Jinchuriki. If I kill them, I will show the world who I am. I will have shown my purpose to live. Gaara commented after listening to his mother. Let me out. Shukaku demanded. I will personally help you kill them. Let's show the world who we are together. Let's. Gaara nodded his head in agreement. Daichi continued to move through the forest, carrying the unconscious Gaara on his back. The Sunagakure Chunin cursed, sensing the chakra signatures approaching him. He knew that they were the ones with the highest levels of chakra, meaning that they would be able to easily defeat him and obtain Gaara. Just keep moving at this pace. I can get Gaara away and hide him somewhere where he can recover. When he does, he can become the demon and kill them and help with the invasion. The man repeated to himself. As he started to think about his situation and what he was going to do, he felt movement on his back. Daichi stopped moving as he realized what was happening. Gaara was recovering from his shock and would be able to fight. Thank God. The man sighed in relief. Our ace for the invasion is combat ready dash. All will die so that I may prove my worth. Gaara screamed, his voice booming with demonic fury. Sand began to cover the Jinchuriki's body, and caused him to resemble a tanuki. He transformed and took the shape and likeliness of the demon Shukaku. Daichi's eyes widened and the man dropped him. Gaara landed on his feet and gave the Suna Chunin a sinister grin. Gee Gaara, it's gee good tea to see you or dash Daichi started to stutter. The man stopped speaking as Gaara rushed him, impaling the man's heart with his newly formed claws. Daichi died almost instantaneously. Upon killing him, Gaara pulled out his claw and watched Daichi's body fall from the tree branch and hit the ground. The Jinchuriki then looked over at his claw and noticed that it was covered in the Suna Chunin's blood. Begin with the preparations, Gaara. The fox and the horse are coming, and I want to personally kill them with you. Shukaku informed his Jinchuriki. Yes, mother. Let's kill them all. Gaara screamed, his voice becoming even more similar to Shukaku's. Naruto, we're approaching the Ichibi Jinchuriki. He has stopped moving, making me think he is recovered and ready for battle. Be cautious. This won't be an easy fight. Han advised Naruto. The Uzumaki nodded in understanding. After a few more seconds of traveling, two Jinchuriki arrived at a clearing in the middle of the forest. Han felt Gaara's demonic chakra in the area and knew that they had finally arrived. They had both arrived just in time to watch Gaara finish the transformation process. Standing in front of them was not the Jinchuriki, instead, they were staring at the towering figure of a large tanuki made entirely out of sand. What is that? Naruto barely spat out. His eyes were wide and he was staring intently at the tanuki, trying to analyze how big and strong it really was. That's the Ichibi no Shukaku. Han spoke in awe at the sight of the Bijū. Chapter 30, Absolute Chaos. That's the Ichibi no Shukaku. Han spoke in awe at the sight of the Bijū. That's the Ichibi? Naruto shouted, his eyes not leaving the tanuki for a second. That's a Bijū? Han nodded, not giving a verbal reply. The Gobi Jinchuriki had seen and experienced many things during his life and career as a shinobi. He had gone against shinobi with summoning contracts, and has personally faced many large, dangerous animals. Nothing in his experiences, however, competes with standing directly in front of one of the 9 Bijū. At first, the Ichibi no Shukaku seemed as if he was motionless. Naruto and Han took advantage of its lack of action to study him properly and think of what they were going to do. As the two continued to study the giant tanuki, they noticed Gaara's human body on top of the Bijū. It was as if he was sticking out of the Bijū's head. The red head made a hand sign, causing him to droop his head, as if he had fallen asleep. Immediately, the giant tanuki started to move. A grin crossed the Bijū's lips as he looked up into the sky. Finally. I'm free. Shukaku screamed. The Bijū proceeded to jump upwards and stretch his limbs, adjusting to life out in the real world. His jump created a large crater underneath his body. Naruto and Han both stared blankly at the Bijū. Kid, this is bad. This is really, really bad for you. The Kyuubi spoke within Naruto's mind. I realize that Kyuubi. Naruto replied quickly. How do you suggest I do this? You're more familiar with him than both Han and I are. Nothing you do will ever beat Shukaku. Your body wouldn't be able to handle the amount of chakra it would need to actually take him down. Hell, even with it, I don't think you could do it. It's beyond a human's capabilities to defeat a Bijū. The Kyuubi answered. So, your focus shouldn't be on defeating Shukaku, but rather forcing his Jinchuriki to become awake. You saw that jutsu he made that released Shukaku? What the boy did was simply force himself asleep. His seal seems to contain the tanuki only when he is awake. What you and your Nii-san need to do is to bring him out of his sleep. That should force Shukaku asleep and make this a winnable fight for you. Naruto listened carefully to the advice Kyuubi had for him. Once the fox told him how to get rid of Shukaku, he turned his attention towards Han. We need to somehow reach Gaara. The Bijū will only be here as long as Gaara is asleep and unable to contain it. If we wake him up, then we force Shukaku away. The blonde told the armored-wearing shinobi. Understood. Han nodded. The Iwa Jonin took a deep breath before he looked towards the Bijū in slight amusement. I have to admit, I've been curious how a Bijū fights. Guess I will finally get an answer to my curiosity. He then glanced towards the Uzumaki. This won't be easy for either of us. Are you ready? Of course. Naruto nodded his head. This'll take more than I think either of us can handle on our own. Use the chakra of the Kyuubi. I will use the gobis. Han stated. He then made a hand sign and was surrounded by the demonic chakra of the five-tailed dolphin horse. One singular red tail formed directly behind Han. He's right, Naruto. You'll need my chakra to reach him, and more than you normally use. The Kyuubi informed the blonde sharply. Your body can handle one tail worth of my chakra without you being overwhelmed. I will grant you the necessary chakra to use that much. Just don't die, kid. I promise I won't. Naruto replied to the fox as he made a hand sign. As he made the hand sign, a similar shroud of demonic chakra surrounded his body. His features became more feral and his eyes picked up a reddish tint. One tail of chakra formed around the boy's body, showing that Kyuubi gave him the right amount of chakra. Naruto took a deep breath and recalled all of Han's teachings, making sure he had complete control of himself. Once he was certain he was in control, he opened his eyes and gave Han a thumbs up. Let's do this, he said, determination running through his body. Shukaku finally stopped stretching and adjusting to his freedom. The Bijū then turned his attention to Naruto and Han. His eyes were focused intently on them and the shrouds of chakra that surrounded them. Kokuo and Kurama, I hope that you two are watching this. I will prove my superiority to you two by killing the two that have you under their control. Shukaku taunted. Kurama? Naruto repeated the name in his head. He recalled that Kokuo was the real name of the Gobi. This meant that Kurama could only refer to one creature. Is that your dash? You have no right to call me by that name, but this isn't the time to argue about that. The Kyuubi hissed. Focus on the giant tanuki. The Uzumaki was snapped out his thoughts just in time to see giant bullets of wind flying in his direction. His eyes widened as both he and Han jumped out of the way before being hit. The bullets, instead, collided with the trees that were behind them, destroying them instantly. We need to approach with caution, Han said, his eyes focused intently on Shukaku. I'll lead. You follow behind me and take advantage of any openings I create. If you see an opportunity to get an attack in, go for it. Right. The Uzumaki nodded his head. With those words, the two Jinchuriki charged forward, using the enhanced speeds of their Bijū. Han led the charge with Naruto following right behind. Upon being released from their coffins, the consciences of Hashirama, Tobirama, and Ishikawa started to return. The three men looked around the land of the living in confusion. Their eyes then focused on the men in front of them, Hirozen, Jiraiya, and Inoki. Sarutobi. Monkey. Is that you? Hashirama questioned with a sad smile on his face. It is. It's been a long time, hasn't it, sensei? Hirozen replied, returning the man's sad smile with one of his own. It really has. You've grown old. The Shodaime Hokage chuckled. Ishikawa. Shodaime-sama, do you remember me by chance? Inoki asked, slightly hesitantly. Ishikawa stroked his beard for a moment, his eyes focused intently on Inoki. A second passed before he chuckled. Young Inoki. It has been a long time since I passed. When I last saw you, you were nothing more than a small, mere pebble. Now, though, I see a man who has become a massive boulder. And it seems that you've replaced me at some point and become the Tsuchikage. You've done well, Inoki. Inoki couldn't resist the urge to smile. Despite the circumstances involved with the Edo Tensei, he was thrilled to hear such words from the Shodaime Tsuchikage, the man who had inspired him to become the shinobi that he was today. It's touching to hear these conversations. It truly is. It almost hurts for me to have to cut them off so soon. Orochimaru commented with mock sadness. Tobirama, who had been silent since his reincarnation, turned his head and glared at the Sannin. So, you are the one who summoned us with the very technique I designed. Tobirama noted with disgust. I am. I must say, you designed a marvelous jutsu that I am still working on improving. There's so much potential with it, after all. Orochimaru chuckled as he pulled out 3 kunai knives with tags attached to them. Tobirama recognized them immediately and turned his head towards Hirozen. One of you needs to destroy those. Now. Inoki was the first to react, making a series of hand signs. After completing the hand signs, he clapped his hands together. He then created a 3-dimensional cube of chakra between his hands. He then made a gesture, causing the cube to move forward. It then surrounded the kunai in Orochimaru's hands. The Sannin's eyes widened and he pulled his hand back before the Tsuchikage could finish his jutsu. Dust Style, Atomic Dismantling Jutsu. Immediately, the cube exploded from the inside. In the process, the kunai and the tags were destroyed. Orochimaru scowled at the Sandaime Tsuchikage in response. The dust release is as deadly as I had heard. He noted. I'll be more cautious around you, Inoki-san. I was going to eradicate the memories of your predecessors, but I suppose I can let them be conscious when they fight you. Then started to chuckle again. I suppose this works out better this way. They can be conscious and note exactly how they destroyed you all. The snake Sannin made a hand sign, causing the 3 deceased Kage's bodies to stiffen. Hirozen, Inoki, and Jiraiya immediately prepared for battle. I know you are familiar with the subject, Hirozen, but are either of you by chance an expert in Fuinjutsu? Tobirama questioned Jiraiya and Inoki. Jiraiya nodded his head, which prompted the Nidaime Hokage to continue speaking. Fight me and my brother. While we are fighting, I'll try and talk you through how to dispel the jutsu. Just make sure we don't accidentally kill you. I'll try and help out by telling you how to avoid my attacks. Or something like that. Hashirama offered. I'll do my best. Just tell me how to end the jutsu, and I'll do what I can. Jiraiya nodded his head in understanding. While you keep them busy, I'll be fighting my own predecessor. Inoki said, his eyes focused on Ishikawa. You know, I choose to look at this as a blessing. I believe this jutsu will be dispelled, and that no life-threatening harm will come to you or IWA. Therefore, I can just take this time to see what kind of shinobi you have become. Ishikawa noted with a smile. Enough chatter. Try and offer help if you can. I assure you, it will all be for naught. Today, the Sannin Tsuchikage and Hokage, along with the Toad Sage, shall perish. Orochimaru spoke up in irritation. He made another hand sign, expressing his orders and intent for the deceased Kage. Immediately, the three reincarnated shinobi charged at the group. Both Hashirama and Tobirama charged at Jiraiya, who jumped backwards to place distance between him and them. They then followed him to another area of the balcony to do battle. Ishikawa and Inoki also moved to a different area to have their own battle separate. Orochimaru and Hiruzen remained alone in the center. The Sannin Hokage glared at the man. I'm surprised you let Ishikawa-san and my predecessors simply challenge the others. Do you really think you can take me on by yourself, Orochimaru? Hiruzen spoke coldly to his former student. Perhaps I'm being a little overconfident. I did intend on fighting you with them. I suppose I can call them back here if I do need a little extra help, and you prove more of a fight than I expect. But I guess, with the opportunity presented to me, I'd like to try and take you on myself. Orochimaru chuckled. This attack's primary goal was to make sure you die after all, Sarutobi-sensei. It'd be more fun if I was able to kill you off by myself. You can try, but nothing you can do will help you kill me. Hiruzen replied, glaring at his former student. Orochimaru's chuckling stopped as a snake extended from his mouth. The snake's mouth opened up, spitting out the Kusanagi sword. The Sannin Hokage, seeing his student pulling out his own weapon, bit his finger, and made a series of hand signs before slamming his palm on the ground. A few seconds later passed before a tall monkey with white fur wearing a black suit and a Konoha forehead protector appeared next to the Hokage. Enma, it has been a while since the two of us have been in combat together. I need your help today more than ever. Hiruzen spoke to the monkey. Enma looked directly at Orochimaru and nodded his head. It's about time this fight happened. Let us make up for your mistake years ago and kill this man. After finishing his statement, Enma's body transformed into the shape of an adamantine staff. Hiruzen grabbed the staff and swung it around for a few seconds before turning his attention to Orochimaru. Enma is right, Orochimaru. It's time I did what I failed to do years ago and finally bring you down myself. The Sannin Hokage spoke, determination evident in his voice. I'd like to see you try. Orochimaru taunted, gripping the Kusanagi tightly in his hands. The former teacher and student charged at one another, gripping their weapons tightly in their hands. Ninja Art, Wind Scythe Jutsu. Tamari swung her fan in the direction of Shikamaru, causing a massive gust of sharp winds to come forwards the Nara. He jumped out of the way, causing the wind to hit the trees behind him. The trees were cut up with branches and the tops of trees falling to the ground. The Suna Kunoichi proceeded to swing her fan, using the same jutsu once again. Shikamaru, once again, was forced to jump out of the way to dodge the incoming gusts of wind. The tree branch he was on, along with the trees behind him, were cut and destroyed once more. This could go on for a while. I need to go on the offensive myself. The Nara told himself. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Shikamaru ran through hand sings before breathing out a series of fireballs. The fireballs flew directly towards Tamari. Instead of dodging, Tamari simply grinned and swung her fan hard. The resulting wind collided with the fireballs, causing them to turn in direction. The wind also fanned the flames, making them larger. The fireballs proceeded to fly back in the direction they came from, directly at Shikamaru. The Nara's eyes widened as he was forced, once again, to jump out of the way. The flames proceeded to hit more trees, lighting them on fire and destroying the environment around them. You thought you were so clever, having fire-style ninjutsu against me, a wind specialist. Too bad for you that I'm better at wind-style ninjutsu than you are with your fire attacks. I'll just blow them right back in your face. Tamari taunted, hoping to psyche out her opponent. I figured. Shikamaru grumbled, annoyed that his fire element was going to be useless in this fight. The Nara looked upwards toward Tamari and noticed that there was a tree right behind her that was higher than her. He then tossed a kunai with a hidden explosive tag directly at it. Tamari braced herself to dodge the kunai, but the weapon didn't even come close to hit her. Once the kunai made contact with the tree, it exploded, causing the tree to fall apart. The trunk of the tree then fell forward, directly towards Tamari. Her eyes widened as she jumped out of the way and moved closer to Shikamaru. Seeing her getting closer, Shikamaru quickly rushed forward, making another set of hand signs. He finished his jutsu just as he landed on the same tree branch Tamari was on. Ninja Art, Shadow Possession Jutsu. Shikamaru's shadow moved directly towards the Suna Kunoichi. The girl quickly noticed the approaching shadow and jumped off the tree branch, heading to another nearby branch. To her surprise, the shadow continued to follow, extending past the tree branch it was on and floating over the air to reach the tree branch she was on. So, the shadows don't need to be on solid ground. It can be flexible and even move over the air if it needs to. Tamari made a mental note of this fact. Realizing that trying to avoid Shikamaru's shadow wasn't going to help her fight, Tamari proceeded to swing her fan directly at Shikamaru, creating another set of sharp gusts of wind heading towards him. To avoid the attack, Shikamaru was forced to cancel his jutsu and jump away from the wind. Seeing that the shadow had stopped chasing her, Tamari took the moment to charge Shikamaru. The girl jumped directly at him and swung her fan at him as if it were a staff. The Nara was forced to use a kunai knife to block her fan. Immediately afterward, Tamari's heavier fan overpowered him and his kunai. The knife was knocked away and Shikamaru was momentarily stunned. Tamari took this moment to swing her fan again, causing it to collide against the Konoha Genin's stomach. He winced in pain as he was sent backwards slightly in pain. Tamari smirked, noticing the distance that was placed between the two as she prepared to swing her fan again towards him. Ninja Art, Wind SCY-. Before she could finish her jutsu, Shikamaru tossed a kunai knife with an explosive tag at the tree branch she was standing on. He activated the tag just as Tamari swung her fan, finishing her jutsu. The tag exploded, resulting in the destruction of the tree branch and causing Tamari to fall towards the ground. Her jutsu, however, was not cancelled. As Tamari fell towards the ground, her fan was now facing upward towards the tree above her. The gust of wind was released upward towards the tree, causing all of the branches and the top of the tree to fall downward towards Tamari on its way to the ground. Shit! The Suna Kunoichi cursed. Shikamaru watched intently, hoping that the falling tree branches would hit the girl before she could get away. To his disappointment, however, Tamari managed to get over the shock and actually jump away before hitting the ground and before getting hit by the falling tree. She landed on another branch of a separate tree. She proceeded to give the Nara an amused smile. "You're not pretty bad. Smart on feet and still standing, even though you actually had 2 fights already. I'm impressed." She admitted her praise. "I'd return the compliment, but traitors don't impress me that much," Shikamaru replied, shaking his head in disgust. "What happened? Why is your village attacking ours? Konoha and Suna are allies. Something like this shouldn't be happening." Tamari winced at hearing Shikamaru's questions. She remained quiet for a few seconds before she spoke up. "I don't know why my village is attacking yours. I'm just a simple shinobi, nothing more. What I do know is that I pledged my loyalty to Suna, and I will act in my village's interest. And if it means fighting in battle against my wishes, then so be it," she answered proudly as she gripped her fan tightly, preparing for her next attack. "Whatever." Shikamaru shook his head again. "I understand, I guess. You act in your village's best village and try to invade our village. And I'll act in my village's best interest and stop you." Kankuro made a pushing gesture with his hands, causing Karasu to fly through the air towards Hinata. Hidden blades appeared on the palms of the puppet. It attempted to slice at Hinata with the blades, but the Hyuga jumped backwards to avoid the attack. The puppet, however, continued its pursuit of the girl, making another attempt to cut her with its blade. Hinata, this time, sidestepped and dodged the puppet. She moved herself directly behind the puppet, her Byakugan focused on the strings of chakra she could see connected to the puppet. If I get rid of those, then he is out of weapons. That would end the battle fast, she told herself as she tightened her fists. The Hyuga immediately cut through the chakra strings with a chop. The puppet, without its connection, slumped over on the tree branch. With the connection destroyed and the puppet being useless, Hinata turned her attention towards Kankuro and charged at him. The Suna Genin, despite her rendering his weapon useless, seemed completely unconcerned about her approach. He has no weapon now. I can end this now. Hinata's thoughts were interrupted as she noticed something in her Byakugan's extended vision. What? She was forced to jump out of the way as the puppet, Karasu, had charged at her once again. She landed on a separate tree branch, avoiding being grabbed by the puppet. Karasu turned its head in her direction before opening its mouth. It then spat out a series of senbon in her direction. Hinata, once again, jumped to another tree branch, avoiding the attack. She then studied the puppet and noticed that it was, once again, connected by a series of chakra strings. How did they reform? I just cut through them, she commented aloud with a frown. Kankuro heard her speak and chuckled to himself. Any puppeteer worth their title can recreate chakra strings, even from a distance. Try and cut them all you want, I'll just keep reforming them. The Suna puppeteer made a gesture with his index and ring finger on his right hand, causing Karasu to release another barrage of senbon from its mouth. Hinata jumped out of the way. She then pulled another arrow out that had explosive arrow attached to it and fired it with her bow towards Kankuro. He, unable to see the explosive tag on it, responded by making a pushing gesture with his left hand. Karasu flew through the air directly between him and the arrow. The puppet then caught the arrow with its own hand. Before the puppet could dispose of the arrow, Hinata grinned as she made a hand sign, activating the explosive tag. Karasu's body was strong and managed to resist taking too much damage. However, the explosion did knock its head and its arm away from its body. Seeing that the puppet was, at the moment, unable to fight her off, the girl charged again at Kankuro. On her way through the branches, she pulled out arrows and fired them at the boy, preventing him from making the concentration necessary to piece together his puppet. The Suna Genin cursed as he was forced to concentrate on avoiding her arrows instead of fixing Karasu. In a few seconds, Hinata finally landed on the same tree branch as Kankuro. The girl rushed him, her palms extended. Kankuro jumped backwards to avoid an attack to her stomach. Before she could try and attack him again, however, the boy pulled out a poisonous smoke ball from his pocket and dropped it between the two. Upon making contact with the tree branch, the ball released the poisonous smoke. Crap! Hinata's eyes widened as she jumped away to avoid inhaling the smoke. Kankuro, as well, jumped backwards to another tree branch. Now that he had recreated distance between himself and Hinata, he made a few gestures with his fingers to create more chakra strings. The pieces of Karasu that had been knocked off reconnected with each other and reformed the puppet whole. It's gonna take a lot more than that to defeat a puppeteer, Kankuro taunted, gripping his fist tightly. Karasu mimicked the actions of its puppeteer. I can see that, Hinata mumbled in response before she stared at the Suna Genin with determination in her eyes. But I'll defeat you and your puppet and get back to my friends. I won't let your village do anything to them, or Konoha. It's a little late for that, Kankuro sighed in response. He didn't want to admit to his own concerns about the invasion to anybody, let alone a Konoha shinobi that he was fighting. Therefore, he pushed his own doubts to the side and looked at the kunoichi in front of him as coldly as possible. But we'll see what happens. Right now, your concern is me. I realize that, Hinata replied as she reached for another arrow. Instinctively, Kankuro's fist tightened as he prepared for his, and Karasu's, next action. In the center of the battlefield where the Chunin exam final matches had occurred, Anko and Baki charged at each other. Both shinobi had attempted to land a punch at the other, but ultimately ended up catching each other's fists with their free hand. Anko winced in slight pain, feeling cuts develop on the palm of her hand that had captured Baki's fist, but didn't let the pain stop her from holding him back. The Suna Jonin proceeded to try and kick her. Anko decided to jump backwards, letting go of the man's fist and pulling her own away from his grasp. Baki, however, charged at her and prevented her from placing distance between them. She sidestepped to avoid a punch directly to her face, but she was once again cut slightly on her cheek. "So that's what you are doing." Realization dawned on Anko's face how she was getting cut. "You use the wind to augment your taijutsu. It makes your attacks stronger and gives them the ability to cut, even if you miss the target." The woman stopped talking for a moment to jump backwards and avoid another kick from the man. "I guess the bingo book doesn't lie about your proficiency with the wind element." "It is my specialty, yes." Baki replied with a smirk on his face as he continued to charge Anko. Seeing that she had the disadvantage in hand-to-hand combat, Anko decided to switch the style of fighting. She held out her hand directly in front of Baki's face just as he finished charging her. Hidden shadow snake hands. Snakes appeared from under Anko's coat sleeve, shooting forward. Baki sidestepped to avoid the attack from the snakes. The man was about to continue to charge at the woman, but the snake she had released turned direction and tried to attack him again. He cursed lightly to himself as he was forced to jump backwards to avoid being bit by them. Now that she had placed distance between them, Anko recalled her snakes and proceeded to run through different hand signs. Fire style, dragon flame jutsu. The Tokubetsu Jonin released a blast of fire from her mouth that charged forward in a straight line towards Baki. The Suna Jonin smirked as he made a series of hand signs of his own. Blade of wind. Baki's fingertips concentrated chakra and wind together, forming a wind blade. The Suna Jonin made a slicing gesture with his fingers. The wind went straight through the approaching fire, cutting it in half. The blade continued flying towards Anko, who jumped to avoid being struck. Still, she felt the edge of the wind's blade hit her and caused a deep cut on her shoulder. She winced in pain, once again. "Wait a second." Anko's eyes widened as she began to piece together some information together. This technique he just used, highly concentrated wind that functions almost like a sword that can completely cut up somebody hit by it directly. This man, he's been in Konoha since the beginning of the exams. He was here when Hayate was killed. You killed him. You're the one who killed Gecko Hayate. Anko spoke up quietly. Baki gave the woman a curious stare for a second before realization dawned on his face about who she was talking about. Oh yes, the exam proctor. He was snooping around during a meeting with one of Otogekyu's spies. I didn't want him leaking any information back to your Hokage. The Suna Jonin developed a smirk on his face. Surely you understand. This is war, after all. You're the bastard who killed him. You killed Yuga's fiancé. You killed one of my best friends. The Tokubetsu Jonin nearly growled. Don't get all self-righteous about it. Baki shouted in response, his eyes narrowing into a glare. We're shinobi. Killing comes with the occupation, especially killing those who are a direct threat to our mission and our village. You're right. Anko replied as her eyes narrowed on the man in cold rage. Then I hope you and anybody you are close with don't get too offended when I kill a direct threat to my village, when I kill you. He's tough though. If I'm going to take him down, I have to use everything I got. Kakashi. Thank you for all the training we've done these past months. The snake user mentally thanked her sparring partner as she ran through another set of hand signs. It's time I used the original jutsu and fighting style you helped me develop. With it, I'll get revenge for Hayate. What the hell? The Otogekure Jonin commented as he arrived on the scene. The man had sent his 8 Chunin subordinates forward to intercept the group of Konoha shinobi that were chasing the Ichibi Jinchuriki. He had expected the number advantage to overwhelm the opponents and defeat them easily. When it finally arrived at the area, he was shocked to see his 8 subordinates lying on the ground, dead. Standing by their bodies was only one man in the group that had been sent after Gaara, and he wasn't even a Konoha shinobi. The Oto Jonin recognized him immediately as the Yanbi Jinchuriki, Roshi. I was wondering when you'd show up. The other shinobi you sent weren't that good, to be honest. Roshi noted with a shrug. I suppose you Oto shinobi aren't worth that much, I suppose. You killed all my men. The Oto Jonin hissed quietly before his voice grew louder. You killed them. The man proceeded to charge at the Yanbi Jinchuriki, gripping a kunai knife tight within his hands. The Iwa Jonin proceeded to jump, avoiding the Oto shinobi's attack. He then made a quick series of hand signs before his fist became encased in molten lava rock. As Roshi's body lowered, he prepared to land a punch directly at the man's body. The Oto shinobi, however, was able to dodge just in time. Roshi's fist, instead, made direct contact with the ground, creating a small crater and causing it to catch on fire. So, you avoided one attack. I guess you move faster than at least 7 of the 8 shinobi you sent after me. Roshi commented with a snicker. You'll pay. His opponent continued to growl and charge, acting purely on his rage. As the Oto Jonin charged, he ran through a series of hand signs. Before he could complete them, however, Roshi placed his hands on the ground. Shortly after, lava rushed forward from underneath the ground directly in front of the man in a plume, causing him to break his concentration on his jutsu and stop moving to avoid charging headfirst into the lava. Roshi, noticing that his opponent was now standing still, rushed forward and grabbed the man by his neck. The Oto Jonin gasped for air, unable to breathe due to the tight grip on his neck. Just like your subordinates, you fell victim to your own emotions. All it took was a few choice words to anger you, and you charged at me like a bull without a second thought. You youngsters tend to just rush in, letting your emotions cloud your judgment. You should have been more careful in a fight with me, especially if you saw that I was able to defeat your subordinates by myself. Roshi lectured the man. The Iwa Jonin's eyes were narrowed on the Oto Jonin within his grasp. I actually do see some potential in you. You do move pretty fast, and I'd be curious to see what techniques you have to help with that. I almost wish I could let you live and see if you actually listened to what I had to say. Unfortunately, you're working for the enemy and tried to invade Konoha. Many innocent people are going to die because of yours and your fellow shinobi's actions. It's only fair that you die with them. With those words, Roshi solidified the hand that was gripped around the Oto Jonin's throat and hardened molten rock once again. The Oto Jonin attempted to scream, but he couldn't due to how hard Roshi was squeezing. He died soon after from being unable to breathe and from burns. It really is a shame. Maybe he and the others could have been something if they were in a different village. Roshi mumbled. Does it matter? You shouldn't concern yourself with those shinobi. They're already dead. Your focus should be on catching Shukaku's vessel. A voice spoke within Roshi's head. Surely you can sense his presence. Roshi nodded at the voice's suggestion. I realize that. Hell, I don't even need to sense it, I can see it. The old man looked ahead. Like he had said, the giant tanuki was visible in the distance in a clearing further away from him. I'm heading that way. I am probably going to have to use some of your chakra, if I want to be of help to stop Shukaku, if that's okay, Yanbi. You know how I feel about being called Yanbi. The voice nearly growled. Nevertheless, you can use my chakra. Do what needs to be done to stop Shukaku from doing too much damage. Roshi nodded at those words as he started to rush through the forest in the direction towards Shukaku. Along the way, the man started to make a hand sign, channeling some of the Yanbi's chakra in preparation for the battle. Die! Shukaku screamed as the Bijū raised his hands into the air. Sand-like spikes developed from under the ground directly beneath Han and Naruto. The two Jinchuriki were moving fast enough to avoid being hit by any of the spikes. They continued on their pursuit, getting closer and closer to the giant Bijū. Upon reaching Shukaku's body, Han proceeded to concentrate both the demonic chakra of the Gobi and the steam from the furnace on his armor into his fists. He then jumped into the air and punched Shukaku in the stomach with as much force as he could. The Bijū inched backwards slightly from the force, but didn't seem to take much damage from the attack. The Ichibi raised a claw into the air and attempted to slam Han with it and crush him on the ground. The Iwa Jonin, however, managed to jump away just in time to strike. Shukaku's claw, therefore, made direct contact with the ground. Seeing his opening, Naruto rushed forward and jumped onto the claw. He then moved upwards along Shukaku's arm, running as fast as he could to try and reach the top. Shukaku quickly noticed what he was doing and glared at him. Almost immediately, spikes appeared on the Bijū's arms and the rest of his body. The force of the spikes took Naruto by surprise and knocked him off. The edge of one spike managed to cut into him, giving him a deep wound on his leg. The blonde cursed in pain as he flew through the air. "Naruto, be careful!" Han called out as he jumped into the air. He managed to catch Naruto before the blonde could make direct contact with the ground. What's the name of that technique that Gaara always loved using?" Shukaku spoke up in mock confusion. "Oh yeah. Sand coffin." As soon as Han and Naruto made contact with the ground, sand rushed over towards them and surrounded them in a large circle, trapping them within it. The sand then started to rush forward to crush them within it. "Damn it!" Han cursed. He dropped Naruto to the ground and proceeded to rush through hand signs. Ninja art, steam cannon jutsu. Jutsu. A blast of steam was released from Han's furnace forward, directly against the surrounding sand prison. To his surprise, however, the sand was not breaking. Han attempted to pour more chakra and strength into his jutsu, but the sand continued to stay sturdy. Shukaku's sand is a lot stronger than Gaara's. It'll take more force to break it. Kyuubi advised within Naruto's head. More force. Like a combined jutsu. Naruto realized as he went through hand signs. Wind style, great breakthrough. As Han continued to use his steam cannon to release a blast of steam at the sand, Naruto breathed out a large gust of wind from his lungs, powered by the Kyuubi's chakra. The steam and wind-based ninjutsu worked together and finally managed to destroy the sand coffin around them before the sand could crush them. The two Jinchuriki proceeded to jump out before the sand could reform around them. Shukaku, seeing that both Han and Naruto made it out of his sand alive, scowled. He swung his tail directly at them. Naruto managed to duck in time, but Han was unable to do so. The Iwa Jonin was smacked hard by the tail and was sent flying. He made contact with the ground hard. Han NII. Naruto shouted. Wind style, drilling air bullets. Shukaku shouted. The Ichibi took in a deep breath before expelling out a large air ball that was headed directly towards Han. The Gobi Jinchuriki was still recovering and pulling himself off the ground after being struck last, making him unavailable to dodge the technique. Naruto's eyes widened, causing him to immediately make his own hand signs. Earth style, headhunter jutsu. The Uzumaki quickly traveled under the ground and managed to reach Han before the air bullet could reach him. He then quickly grabbed the man's hand and pulled him back down into the ground. Han was pulled away just in time before the air bullet collided with the surface. They then hurried away just as the bullet reached the location where Han had been. Upon contact, an explosion resulted, hollowing out the ground. Naruto and Han jumped out of the ground where Naruto had previously been. Han looked over to the younger Jinchuriki and smiled at him. That may have been life-saving. You have my gratitude, Naruto. Han told the boy. Don't thank me. What are brothers for? Naruto replied with a chuckle. Besides, you caught me that last time. The Gobi Jinchuriki opened his mouth to say something back in response, but the words died on his lips as the two heard the approaching footsteps of Shukaku. For a couple of humans, you're rather annoying to kill. I suppose that's fitting for the containers of my brothers. Shukaku grumbled. This has gone on long enough though. I want to move on and get some other kills as well, so you're both going to die by my hand shortly. He's clearly overpowering us. Naruto noted with a sigh. We have to find some way to get past him, and get up to Gaara so we can wake him up. Something needs to distract Shukaku. I'll keep trying to do just that. Your priority will be waking up his Jinchuriki somehow. Han continued to suggest. The plan hadn't worked so far, but Naruto found himself nodding in agreement with it. They really had no other options or thoughts at the moment. They just had to keep trying until something worked. Anoki, you recall what I was most famous for, yes? Ishikawa asked the Sandaime Tsuchikage as the two engaged in a battle of Taijutsu. Yes, I remember. Those beer-related jutsus of the Kamizuru clan. Anoki recalled the very techniques that made the Shodaime Tsuchikage a feared opponent. Many of the surviving members of your clan have gone to great lengths trying to perform half the techniques you could. And so far, no one has succeeded. No one has? No one in my clan surpassed me? Not even any of my grandchildren? Suzumabachi? Jibachi? Kurobachi? Ishikawa questioned, almost desperately. Hearing no comment from Anoki caused him to frown and sigh deeply. That's so very disappointing to hear. I had so much faith in them and my clan. The man then felt his body making hand signs, causing his frown to turn into a grimace. Regardless, for your sake Anoki, I hope you recall everything you've seen and heard about my jutsus. After all, the bees that had been bonded with me during my life, the bees that died with me, seem to have been revived by this Edo Tensei jutsu as well. Less than a second passed before the Shodaime finished his hand signs. Thousand Bee Stings Jutsu. A swarm of bees flew out from underneath Ishikawa's kimono. Upon appearing on the battlefield, the bees released their stingers from their body, aimed at Anoki. The Sandaime Tsuchikage proceeded to float in the air to avoid many of the initial stingers. The bees then started to fly upward and continue their attack. Anoki proceeded to move quickly, dodging each and every stinger. I know how poisonous those are. One hit, and I'm surely dead in 10 minutes. Anoki told himself as he made a hand sign. I got to have some type of protection to avoid any chance of getting hit by one. Earth-style, Earth Golem Jutsu. Anoki opened his mouth and, almost instantaneously, a large rock-like creature developed. The creature's rock body proceeded to surround Anoki, giving him an armor of earth. After creating the golem, Anoki did not fear getting stung by the bees' stingers. They bounced off the rock, unable to reach the Sandaime Tsuchikage's skin. Now that he was safe, he charged forward towards the bees, ready to crush them. Ishikawa felt himself making a hand sign. Careful Anoki. I'm making the bees harden into rock. They're going to be a lot stronger than you think in their new condition. As Ishikawa had predicted, the jutsu he was forced to use caused all of the bees that were flying in the air to harden their bodies into stone. Anoki made direct contact with one of the bees. Although the force of his attack would have destroyed it normally, the rock around the bee managed to protect it. Ishikawa felt himself making more hand signs. As soon as he finished, his rock-covered bees started to charge directly at Anoki, one at a time. Each bee hit the golem in the same location. The rock bee would shatter into pieces before being replaced by the next one, which would continue the assault. Anoki's earth golems were strong and able to resist even the strongest of explosions. The collisions with these rock-covered bees, however, were slowly starting to damage the golem. The bees would, eventually, destroy the golem and would begin attacking Anoki directly. I need to stop this before they reach me. I surely wouldn't survive more than a few of their blows. Anoki realized. The man closed his eyes in thought, ignoring the crumbling noise of the golem around him falling apart. To stop the bees, I need to destroy their summoner. Simple as that. I have enough time to prepare a jutsu to completely destroy him. The Sannin Tsuchikage began making a series of long complicated hand signs. He continued to ignore the assault of the rock bees, focusing only on his jutsu. Before his golem collapsed, the man finished his jutsu and created another cube-like structure between his hands. This one, however, seemed to be larger than the previous one he had made. Once it was created, Anoki made a pushing gesture, causing the cube to move through the golem's body, past the bees, and completely surround Ishikawa's body. Dust Style, Atomic Dismantling Jutsu. Anoki activated his jutsu, once again, causing a massive explosion within the cube. Smoke filled the inside of it and, for a moment, the bees stopped attacking him. The Sannin Tsuchikage, feeling as if he won, released the golem around him to make sure that Ishikawa had been defeated. As he looked around, he saw the rock-covered bees flying around him had fallen to the ground and crumbled into pebbles. His eyes then turned towards the smoke that resulted from his jutsu. To his surprise, however, Ishikawa remained there with his body fully intact. The only noticeable change to him was chunks of golden armor lying on the ground next to his feet. Whatever jutsu you used on me, Anoki, was truly impressive. I don't think I can recall the last time someone destroyed my beeswax armor all at once. The Showdown Tsuchikage praised his successor. I can't recall the last time my dust-style ninjutsu didn't completely destroy someone on a molecular level, armor or not. Anoki noted. Despite the situation, the Sannin Tsuchikage allowed himself to smirk as he developed a stronger appreciation for his village's founder. That beeswax armor must really be something. It is, and you managed to ruin it. It takes way too much chakra to recreate, so I think it's safe to say that you won't have to worry about my armor for the rest of the fight. Ishikawa noted. But you still need to be careful, Anoki. My bees aren't done yet. The Showdown Tsuchikage felt himself snapping his finger. Instantly, all of the pebbles on the ground changed shape, turning into his bees. The bees flew back in the air and surrounded Anoki. It appeared as if the exact number of them had grown. I can see that. I'd expect nothing less from you. Anoki replied. It doesn't matter though. I'll find some way to destroy them yet. How familiar are you with the Edo Tensei? Jiraiya, was it? Tobirama questioned the Toad Sage. Jiraiya was about to answer, but he was unable to properly speak as Tobirama's body attempted to punch him in the face. The Sannin was forced to focus on dodging the attack. He then had to block off an attack from Hashirama. The man was forced to block and evade a continuous barrage of attacks from the Showdown and Nidame Hokage. A few seconds passed before Jiraiya was able to jump away and establish some distance between himself and the deceased Hokages before he could get the opportunity to speak. I've read your notes and research on the jutsu and the Forbidden Scroll. I know mostly everything about how it works. Jiraiya finally answered. I know that it's useless to try and kill you both, for example. Thanks to the Edo Tensei, your bodies will reform. Essentially, you have immortality. Brother. What a dark jutsu you have created. Hashirama noted, a frown evident on his face. In hindsight, it was an error to design. Thankfully this Orochimaru doesn't seem too skilled in it. He didn't summon us with our full power after all. Tobirama noted. He then felt his body making a series of hand signs. Careful of my next attack, Jiraiya. The man then finished his hand signs. Water style, water severing wave. Water concentrated in the air from the atmosphere. After enough was concentrated, the water shot forward rapidly towards Jiraiya. The Toad Sage jumped out of the way before being hit by the blast. He immediately was forced to jump again, as Tobirama continued to release another high-pressured stream of water at him. As Jiraiya continued to dodge the attacks, he made a series of hand signs. Once he finished, the Toad Sage clapped his hands together. A massive wall of earth and rock formed between himself and Tobirama. The wall absorbed the damage from the blasts of water, shielding Jiraiya from damage. While safe from the attacks and before the two Hokage could try and charge him again, Jiraiya ran through another series of hand signs. Earth release, swamp of the underworld. The surface underneath Hashirama's and Tobirama's feet changed, turning into mud. The deceased Hokages attempted to move, but were ultimately unsuccessful. Their bodies were stuck within the mud. My body can't move at all. I can see you really are a skilled ninja. Tobirama complimented the Toad Sage. He felt his body still continue to resist and try and pull itself out of the swamp, but none of its efforts were working. Neither were the efforts of Hashirama's body. With your skill, I could see you becoming Hokage. Thanks for the compliment, but I'm not interested in the title. I have my own responsibilities that I need to do that are separate from the title. Jiraiya replied back. But enough about that. While you're stuck, let's talk about the Edo Tensei. How would you propose releasing the jutsu? The primary method to releasing jutsu is to seal our souls away. If you do that, then the physical bodies of the Edo Tensei will be destroyed. The Nidame Hokage answered. The only sealing method that wouldn't end your life is slightly complicated, but if you are indeed a master of Fuinjutsu, then you should be able to accomplish it. You have something to make the seals with, yes? I do. Jiraiya replied as he pulled out a scroll from a pocket in his clothes. I always have scrolls on me in case I need to do a seal. Good. Then listen carefully. The seal is going to need to be done in your blood and needs to be exact. Tobirama started to explain. Jiraiya nodded and immediately bit his thumb, so he could write the proper seal on the scroll. The first stroke dash. Jiraiya, be careful. Hashirama shouted, interrupting his brother's explanation. He felt his body making a series of hand signs. With style, deep forest creation. Trees started to grow underneath the battlefield. In a moment, their battlefield was covered in trees and resembled a dense forest. A few trees had formed from underneath the swamp. These trees ended up lifting Tobirama and Hashirama out of their imprisonment in the swamp. Their bodies were now free. Immediately after, they charged after Jiraiya again. Shit! Jiraiya cursed as he was forced to put his scroll away for now. The Toad Sage was, once again, forced into combat as he tried to avoid the attacks of both Hokages. Both Hashirama and Tobirama seemed to possess great skill with Taijutsu. Even though they were not summoned with their full strength, their combined Taijutsu prowess was enough to overwhelm Jiraiya. At this rate, I'll never be able to focus on the seal. I have to buy myself time. Jiraiya realized. As Hashirama and Tobirama, again, tried to attack him, the Toad Sage pulled out 2 sets of explosive tags. With both deceased Hokage in close proximity to him, Jiraiya sneaked both tags onto their bodies and jumped away. He immediately activated them both, causing both to explode. Both Hashirama's and Tobirama's bodies were blown up, separating their torso from the rest of their bodies. Can you still talk? I know that didn't kill you. Jiraiya questioned frantically as he pulled out his scroll. I can, yes. Tobirama answered in affirmation. Our bodies will reform though in just a few seconds. We need to get back to work with the seal. Right. Jiraiya replied. Please, hurry. What's the first stroke? It seems as if your predecessor, Hashirama, was forced to use his Kekii Genkai and create a forest battlefield. How intriguing. I suppose Jiraiya has gotten better than I thought. Orochimaru noted with a smirk. Hiruzen did not reply to Orochimaru's comment. Instead, he focused solely on fighting off his former student. The two were engaged in close combat as Orochimaru and Hiruzen attempted to strike at the other with their sword and staff respectively. Both were locked into a stalemate. Each of them had occasionally landed strikes at each. Orochimaru's body was starting to bruise heavily as a result, and Hiruzen had many cuts from the Kusanagi. Still, both men ignored the pain and their injuries. They focused solely on landing a decisive hit that would kill their opponent. Orochimaru swung his sword at Hiruzen, causing the Sandaime Hokage to block the attack once again. This time, however, a snake appeared from underneath Orochimaru's sleeve and charged straight toward Hiruzen. He was forced to jump backwards to avoid the attack, placing distance between himself and Orochimaru. Multiple striking shadow snake. 10 large snakes shot out from Orochimaru's sleeve and charged at his former teacher. Seeing the approaching snakes, the Sandaime Hokage ran through a series of hand signs. Fire style, fire dragon bullet. Hiruzen breathed a large stream of fire from his mouth right as the snakes reached him. Immediately, the snakes screeched in pain before their bodies melted under the intense heat of the flames. The fire continued as it approached Orochimaru. The Sannin smirked as he jumped in the air to avoid the flame. He then pulled out a singular shuriken and tossed it at his former teacher. Realizing what Orochimaru was doing, Hiruzen pulled out a shuriken of his own. They both then made a singular hand sign. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. The two shuriken multiplied, creating thousands of shuriken. Each shuriken collided with each other, causing the attacks to miss. All of the weapons fell to the ground between the two men. As they hit the ground though, Orochimaru smirked as he made another hand sign. Instantaneously, his set of shuriken transformed shapes, taking the shape of 1,000 tiny snakes. Each snake rushed forward on the balcony towards Hiruzen. The Sandaime Hokage made a singular hand sign, turning the balcony tiles around him into mud. The mud made it difficult for the snakes to move as fast as they had previously been moving, but it did not stop their advances. As a result, Hiruzen then made a series of hand signs. Earth style, Earth Dragon Bullet. A dragon's head formed from the mud. The snakes that were all moving in the mud were forced together and brought into the dragon's head. The dragon then proceeded to spit out bullets of mud towards Orochimaru. Within each bullet, a series of his snakes were trapped inside of them. Fire style, Fire Dragon Bullet. Once again, Hiruzen released a stream of fire from his mouth. The fire ignited with the earth dragon and the mud bullets, causing both to be consumed in fire. The snakes that were inside were destroyed due to the intense heat. These flame-covered mud bullets were sent flying towards Orochimaru. The Sannin was hit head-on by the combined jutsu. His body melted, turning into a pile of mud and revealing himself to be a clone. Realizing this, Hiruzen turned around just in time to see Orochimaru attempt to cut him with the Kusanagi. Once again, Hiruzen used his staff to block the attack. Your reflexes have not dulled at all in your old age. Orochimaru commented with a smirk on his face. Age hasn't made me weak, Orochimaru. I'm still strong enough to defeat you, as I was when I first met you when you were a genin. Hiruzen informed his former student sharply. Such confidence. I always thought you were more cautious than that, Sarutobi-sensei. The Sannin replied. I am confident because the life of the village is in my hands. In a moment like this, I can't lose. Even if I were to die here, I'd save Konoha and take you with me. The Sandaime Hokage exclaimed. With those words, Hiruzen pushed harder with his staff, managing to knock Orochimaru off balance. Seeing an opportunity, the Sandaime proceeded to swing his staff again directly towards Orochimaru's chest. Unfortunately, the Sannin managed to squirm away, using his flexibility to duck underneath Hiruzen's attack. He then jumped backwards and gripped his sword tightly, ready to continue their battle. I'll repeat myself, such confidence. If you really feel that strongly, then come. Show me exactly how you intend on saving Konoha. He taunted his former sensei. Gladly. Hiruzen nodded his head as he charged at his former student once again. Anko, upon finishing her hand signs, clapped her hands together. Her eyes seemed to light up as she channeled chakra around her entire body. Ninja art, flare aura. The chakra that surrounded Anko's body changed shape to resemble red flames. The Tokubetsu Jonin was now surrounded entirely by fire. The flames, however, were most concentrated in her hands. This is unique. An original jutsu. Baki noted, trying to figure out the secrets behind Anko's attack. I presume that's an armor of sorts that you think can prevent you from getting cut up. I wouldn't call it armor. It's a lot more than that. Anko replied as she glared at him. There was now a literal fire in her eyes as she glared at the Suna Jonin. The Konoha shinobi jumped into the air directly above Baki. She clapped her hands together, causing the fire that was concentrated in her hands to form into circular balls of flames. Fire style, Hellfire Rain. Anko proceeded to toss the fireballs down towards Baki. The Suna Jonin moved out of the way, causing the fireballs to hit the ground and cause the ground to catch on fire. The Tokubetsu Jonin continued to spawn fireballs in her hands that she chucked towards Baki. With each attack Baki dodged, the more the battlefield proceeded to catch on fire. After avoiding 10 fireballs, the Suna Jonin decided to change tactics. Once he finished his jutsu, he breathed out a heavy gust of wind to redirect the fireballs back towards Anko. To his surprise, however, the fireballs moved directly through the wind and towards him. He was hit directly on the leg by one of his fireballs, causing him to wince from the burning. Remember that fire overpowers wind. That wasn't a wise decision. Anko taunted. Unless the wind is stronger, in which I can redirect your fire. Baki retorted with a glare. That jutsu you used earlier, it's no armor. It's just converting all of your chakra to pure fire. All of your fire-style ninjutsu is augmented by it, isn't it? I could probably use it for armor as well, but that is true. It also allows me to use other mediums besides my mouth as a means to create fire. But I'm not going to admit to any of that out loud. Anko thought to herself. Instead, she proceeded to run through a series of hand signs. Fire style, widespread ruin. The fire that was surrounding the battlefield due to her missed fireballs started to move on its own accord. The flames started to spin around in a circle around Baki, before they began to rapidly close in, preparing to both crush and burn him to death simultaneously. So, she can manipulate any form of fire around her now as well. This means even avoiding her attacks won't help me. If the battlefield catches on fire, then she'll just have other fire that she can use that I'll have to watch for, Baki cursed as he became aware of the situation he was in. He then proceeded to concentrate a heavy amount of wind and chakra in both hands. I have to extinguish these flames. Blade of Wind Hurricane. Baki swung his hands in a circle, releasing the heavily concentrated blades of wind in his hands. The heavily concentrated wind created hurricane-like winds that flew in all directions towards the approaching flames. After making contact with the fire, Baki's wind managed to overpower the flames and extinguish them. Once he was free from the fire, the Suna Jonin turned his attention towards Anko and charged at her, concentrating both wind and chakra in his hand again. Blade of Wind Barrage. Both of Baki's fists were covered entirely with heavily concentrated blade-like winds. Anko, seeing his move, retaliated by concentrating the fire around her into her fists. The two shinobi continued their earlier fight using only Taijutsu augment by their element. Baki's wind-style Taijutsu managed to pierce Anko's flames and still cut her, causing her to continue to get cut. Similarly, Anko's flame-covered fists managed to create burns on Baki's body. The two ignored the pain, however, and continued their fight of Taijutsu. As I said earlier, fire is only superior to wind if the wind is not strong enough to put out the fire, and I have the necessary strength to create winds that can blow out all of your flames. Baki taunted Anko amidst their taijutsu fight. We'll see about that. I've been training hard these past few months and developing my strength and my skills with fire. My flames aren't going to go out easily. Anko replied. The two said no more words, they simply concentrated on their fight, trying to land blows on their opponent. Wind style, great task of the dragon. Tamari swung her fan upward toward the sky. Immediately afterwards, storm clouds began to develop in the sky directly above the battlefield. Shikamaru's eyes briefly went towards the sky, trying to piece together exactly what Tamari had planned for him. His attention, however, returned back to the Suna Kunoichi. The girl, once again, proceeded to swing her fan at the Nara. Ninja art, wind scythe jutsu. Another gale of wind flew towards Shikamaru. The Konoha shinobi jumped away to another tree branch, avoiding the cutting winds. Tamari then rushed towards him, gripping her fan tightly. She jumped to the tree branch he was on and attempted to swing her fan at him. He managed to move out the way before being slammed by the fan. He then made a hand sign, causing his shadow to extend forward again. Tamari jumped away immediately to avoid the shadow. The Suna Kunoichi proceeded to move from tree branch to tree branch, avoiding the Shikamaru's shadow as it followed her. The Nara continued to try and catch her, but he was starting to notice something suspicious. Why has she not tried to confront me? She knows that she could do something to have me deactivate my jutsu. Why is she just letting me chase her like this? Surely she has to be getting tired by constantly running around. He questioned, his eyes focused intently on her as he tried to question her logic. Tamari's eyes, for a second, looked upward. She noticed that the clouds were ready and her jutsu was complete. The Suna Kunoichi smirked as she made a singular hand sign. The clouds proceeded to disappear and were replaced by a giant tornado that began to descend from the sky, directly above Shikamaru. The Nara looked upward and he cancelled his jutsu. His eyes widened at the sight. Shit dash. Shikamaru did not have enough time to move away from the attack. The tornado surrounded him completely before he could do anything. The strong winds of the tornado began to cut deeply into his skin, tearing his clothes and causing him to bleed extensively with each cut. Shikamaru screamed in pain with each cut. Despite the pain, he attempted to make a series of hand signs. Shadow protection jutsu. The shadows in the area moved quickly and surrounded Shikamaru in a protective barrier, stopping the tornado around him from cutting more into his skin. The Nara, on instinct, sighed in relief. He soon noticed, however, that the wind was cutting into his shadow barrier. He saw cracks beginning to form, which caused his eyes to widen and forced him to put more chakra into his jutsu to maintain the barrier. God damn it, please, let my jutsu hold. Please. Shikamaru pleaded in his head. He saw more cracks developing on the barrier, which caused his thoughts to become more frantic and desperate. Please. Outside the tornado, Tamari watched while breathing heavily. Creating the tornado and maintaining it required of a lot of her chakra. She couldn't see inside her jutsu, so she wasn't certain about the Nara's condition. She had heard him screaming near the beginning of her jutsu, but now she couldn't hear him anymore. He has to be unconscious by now, or dead. Tamari realized, feeling a little sick to her stomach at the thought of making her first kill during war. Making a hand sign, the Suna Kunoichi cancelled her jutsu and dispelled the tornado. As the tornado began to slowly fade, Tamari walked forward closer to it, wanting to inspect Shikamaru's body and make sure that he was dead. Shadow possession jutsu. To her surprise, Shikamaru was both alive and conscious. The moment the tornado had completely disappeared, the Nara's shadow extended forward at a rapid rate. Tamari was not able to react in time and was captured by his shadow, making her unable to move her body. How are you still able to fight after that? Tamari questioned in complete shock. The Nara did not answer her question. Instead, he made another hand sign. A shadowy hand began to creep up Tamari's body, heading towards her neck. The shadow reached just above her chest before it slowly started to recede down her body. Damn it! Shikamaru cursed in his head, gritting his teeth. Not again. Not now. It seems you're running out of chakra. Tamari commented, relief filling her body. She knew that his control of her would soon fade, and that their fight would be over. He wouldn't be able to fight her properly with no chakra. No. I'm not out of chakra. Not yet. Shikamaru shouted. The Nara closed his eyes as he tried to focus more of his own energy and chakra into his jutsu. A moment passed before the shadow hand continued to crawl up Tamari's body, once again. It only stopped upon reaching the neck of the kunoichi. Shadow neck binding jutsu. The shadow tightened around Tamari's neck, strangling her. The Suna kunoichi attempted to resist and get away, but there was nothing she could do. She was still under Shikamaru's paralysis. Her eyes slowly closed and the girl fell into unconsciousness. Realizing that she had been defeated, Shikamaru released his jutsu. Tamari's body fell down on her stomach. Once she had fallen over, Shikamaru walked over to make sure that she was unconscious. Realizing that she was, Shikamaru then turned his attention towards the giant Bijū in the distance, towards Shukaku. I was kept here for too long. And used too much of my energy on her. Shikamaru noted to himself. His own thoughts were interrupted by his need to take deep breaths. The boy was physically exhausted. I probably can't help out much, but I can't let Naruto and Hinata be alone. With that sole thought, Shikamaru started to move towards the battlefield with Shukaku, hoping that he would able to get back some energy on the way there, and would be able to help out his friends in the battle. Hinata and Kankuro were locked into a stalemate as the two continued to try and attack each from a distance. The Hyuga used her arrows and her water-style gunshot to attack the Puppeteer. In response, Kankuro would urge his puppet to release a wave of kunai or a poisonous smoke ball at the girl. Their attacks would either cancel each other out, or the two would simply avoid the attacks by moving to another tree branch. This fight is going nowhere for me if we continue to fight like this from a distance. This is where he is strongest at. I need to get close up to him. The only question is how. Hinata questioned to herself. His puppet is in the way, and it moves too fast for me to get past it. I can't afford to waste my time here for too long. Tamari may need me, or maybe even Gaara. Kankuro thought to himself as he looked backwards towards the giant Bijū in the distance. I really can't afford to just stall her any longer. I need to take her down now. Poison mist hell, 100 continuous firing. Kankuro made a sweeping gesture with his hands, causing Karasu to move forwards toward Hinata. The puppet quickly surrounded the Hyuga and continued to move rapidly in a circle around her. Hinata kept her Byakugan-activated eyes focused on the puppet, preparing for its next attack. After a few seconds of continuous movement, Karasu launched multiple poison smoke balls from its mouth. The balls made contact with the tree branch and immediately released the poisonous gas. Hinata quickly jumped upwards, avoiding the poison smoke. Got her. Kankuro smirked as he made a tug on one of the strings of his puppet. Karasu's elbow opened up before releasing a barrage of Senbon at the Hyuga. Hinata, although she could see the upcoming attack, didn't have the time to avoid the attack. She was hit hard by the Senbon and was knocked downward, back into the poison gas. Hinata began coughing the second she entered the poison gas cloud. She proceeded to make a series of hand signs before using the water-style gunshot to clear the air around her, causing the poison gas to move away from her. Still, the girl had inhaled enough of the poison. She was continuing to cough and looked as if she was having difficulty standing. She'll be knocked out in 30 minutes, maybe even die if she doesn't get treated before the day ends. Kankuro noted in his head, recalling the particular poison he used in his smoke balls. Only a little more should do it. Then she'll be done. The Suna puppeteer made a pushing gesture, causing Karasu to rush to Hinata. The puppet grabbed her and held her tightly against its body. Hinata tried to resist and managed to free her hands from the puppet's grasp, but she was unable to pull herself completely away. She continued to choke as the puppet started to squeeze her body. Despite her pain, Hinata focused on bringing her hands to the chakra strings attached to the puppet. He said cutting them won't do anything, because he's fast enough to create new strings and attach them again. She reminded herself of Kankuro's words. But he never said what would happen if I did something else to his puppet strings. Instead of cutting the chakra strings, Hinata grabbed them and injected some of her own chakra into the strings. Her chakra created a disturbance with the flow of Kankuro's chakra, causing Karasu to let go of Hinata. Similarly, Hinata's chakra maneuvered itself through the puppet strings back to Kankuro's body. The brief spike of chakra paralyzed his body momentarily. What the hell? The puppeteer mumbled as he felt himself unable to move his body. Now free and with her opponent immobile, Hinata jumped towards Kankuro. She moved slower due to the poison in her bloodstream, but she managed to reach him before he could move. Kankuro's paralysis began to fade as she jumped on the tree branch he was on, but it was already too late. She had managed to get close to him, and was in a stance to attack. 8 trigrams, 32 palms. She called out. 2 palms. Hinata began a series of strikes at Kankuro's tenketsu. She and her body moved quickly, striking him as fast as she could despite the poison. Kankuro was unable to move as he was forced to take each subsequent attack. 4 palms. 8 palms. 16 palms. Hinata continued to shout. Finally, she ran through a series of strikes at various tenketsu across his body with more force. 32 palms. Hinata's last strike managed to push Kankuro backwards, knocking him off the tree branch he was standing on. The Suna puppeteer hit the ground at the bottom of the forest hard, breaking a few bones on impact. He groaned from the pain, but attempted to ignore it as he moved his head towards Karasu, and attempted to use his hand to create new strings for his puppet. He realized, however, that he was unable to move his hand and create the new strings. Damn it. I can barely move my body. He grumbled to himself. Hell, I can barely feel any chakra in my body. I sealed half of your tenketsu. You won't be able to use chakra properly for a while. Or move. Hinata told the puppeteer as she jumped down towards the ground. She then walked forward towards him, coughing in her hands from the poison. You beat me. Fine. You win. Just kill me now. Kankuro closed his eyes, ready for the worst. To his surprise, however, Hinata did not attack him once she reached him. Instead, she started digging through the pockets of his jumpsuit. What are you doing? He asked slowly in confusion. Why, aren't you Dash? I'm not going to kill you or anything. I'm just looking for an antidote to your poison. Surely you have one, in case you ever accidentally inhaled your own poison. She informed him as she continued to look through his pockets. Kankuro gaped at the girl's words. Although it did make sense for her to check his body for an antidote to the poison, it did not make any sense for her to just simply let him go. Their villages were fighting each other right now, and he had just tried to kill her. Why was she just going to let him go? There it is. Hinata mumbled to herself as she finally found a small pill bottle in one of his pockets. There was writing on it that identified it as the cure for the poison in her bloodstream. She coughed as she opened the bottle, and took out a pill. You managed to beat me, but I really would just flee and get out of here if you can. Kankuro advised the girl. Gaara, he's going to kill everyone around him. There's nothing you or your friends can do to stop him. At first, Hinata didn't respond to the Suna puppeteer's comment and instead simply took the pill in her hands. Although the poison wasn't instantly removed, she felt a little better knowing that the poison would be cured in a few more minutes. Once she was sure that she was going to be fine and the poison wouldn't affect her too much, she turned her attention to the puppeteer. "That's what you think, but I know that we can do something. I know that I can offer some help," Hinata told him. "I won't let any of my friends have to face Gaara alone." With those words, Hinata hurried off towards Shukaku. Kankuro was left alone, left to think about her words and her chances against Gaara. Steam Clone Jutsu. Han's furnace released a barrage of steam that solidified into 9 separate clones of himself. He, along with his clones, rushed forward at Shukaku. Shukaku, again, created sand spikes out of the ground to try and skewer the approaching figures. Each of them avoided the spikes and jumped into the air. Erupting strong foot. Han, along with his clones, delivered a powerful kick augmented by Han's steam to Shukaku's stomach. The force of 10 powerful steam-enhanced kicks caused Shukaku to tilt over slightly. His tail, in particular, became a lot closer to the ground. Noticing this, Naruto rushed forward and jumped on the tail. He then proceeded to start to climb up the tail to reach Shukaku's head. The Bijū quickly regained its composure and noticed the Kyuubi Jinchuriki climbing his body. "You're trying this again? How boring." Shukaku rolled his eyes. Instead of creating spikes in his body, Shukaku opted to shaking his tail and force Naruto off. The blonde grabbed onto the tail tightly and resisted the Tanuki's attempt to shake him off. Seeing that Naruto wasn't able to continue his climb, Han and his clones started making a series of hand signs. Ninja Art, Steam Cannon Jutsu. A blast of steam was released from the original and his 9 clones towards Shukaku. Each blast collided with the Bijū's head, causing him to wince slightly in pain. He stopped shaking his head, giving Naruto the opportunity to continue his climb. "Why you?" Shukaku hissed. The Bijū raised one of his claws and attempted to crush Han and his clones underneath it. The original and his clones, however, managed to avoid the attack. With Shukaku's hand on the ground, Han and his clones began to climb up the arm of the Bijū, mimicking Naruto's actions. Shukaku proceeded to create spikes on his arm to force Han off. Although the spikes managed to hit and dispel Han's steam clones, the original version of the Gobi Jinchuriki predicted the attack and jumped into the air. He then flew directly towards the Bijū's face, his fist covered in steam. Before he could make contact and hit Shukaku with his fist, the Bijū grabbed hold of the Jinchuriki with one of its claws. "Pesky little shit. I'm going to enjoy ripping you apart." The Ichibi hissed. Han gave no verbal reply and, instead, focused on trying to get out of Shukaku's hold. Steam poured out of the furnace on his back in an attempt to weaken the sand, but his attempts to break free failed. Shukaku responded to his attempts to break free by tightening his grip, causing Han to gasp in pain and start to choke. He could feel a few of his bones about to break. Naruto, who had managed to reach Shukaku's back, noticed that Han was caught by Shukaku. He immediately ran through a series of hand signs. Wind style, wind release stream. The Uzumaki released a powerful stream of wind, amplified by Kyuubi's chakra, from his mouth. The stream hit Shukaku's claw head-on with enough force that the Bijū was required to release Han. The Gobi Jinchuriki fell to the ground and managed to land on his 2 feet. "Sneaky bastard!" Shukaku growled. The Bijū slammed its claws together. A barrage of sand was released from his back. Naruto, who was still on the back, was sent flying off Shukaku's body, and was hit by the different blasts of sand. The Uzumaki coughed up blood. Shukaku turned his head towards Naruto and opened his mouth. A sphere of black and white chakra developed in his mouth. The Bijū then released the ball from his mouth directly towards the Uzumaki. Naruto quickly ran out of the way before the ball made contact with him. Upon contact with the ground, the ball created a massive explosion that completely destroyed the ground underneath it. "I can't believe Shukaku is actually using his Bijudama." Does the Tanuki actually think two humans could defeat him, or is he really that desperate for a kill? Either way, it's shameful to use that technique so freely. The Kyuubi noted in Naruto's head, his tone of voice filled with disgust. Kid, I don't think I need to say this again, but if you get hit by that attack, you will die. No exceptions. I figured. Naruto replied, a frown on his face. Naruto, are you all right? What was that technique? Han called out, his eyes wide in surprise at the devastation caused from Shikaku's technique. I'm fine. I got away in time. The Uzumaki sighed in response. The fox said that Shikaku's attack will kill us if we get hit, so make sure you're on your toes. We can't afford to get hit even once. Try and avoid me, I dare you. You'll only fail after a while. Shukaku shouted, interrupting their conversation. The Tanuki opened its mouth and began to form another Bijū. Before he finished preparing his attack and before Naruto and Han could get away, another figure jumped onto the battlefield. Lava style, scorching rocks jutsu. A series of molten rocks were released. The molten rocks made direct contact with the sphere before Shukaku finished his preparations, causing the move to explode in his face. Shukaku was momentarily knocked back, completely stunned by the action. When he had recovered, he looked down to face his two opponents. To his surprise, however, they were joined by a third human. Couldn't wait to start fighting the Bijū without me, could you? Roshi spoke with a chuckle to Naruto and Han. Just like the two of them, the Yanbi Jinchuriki was covered in a shroud of his Bijū's chakra. Unlike them, Roshi was wearing a shroud with 2 tails worth of chakra. Old man. You got away from all of those Odo shinobi. Naruto exclaimed, a grin on his face. Give it a rest with the old man thing, kid. There's many shinobi older than me. Roshi replied with an eye roll. It's good to see you are well, Roshi. We could use your assistance. Han spoke to his fellow IWA Jinchuriki. Despite the request for help, there was a positive tone to Han's voice that revealed that he was relieved to see that his friend was okay. I'll do what I can. The redhead replied as he cracked his knuckles. Shukaku finally realized exactly who the newcomer was. A wide grin developed on his face. Looks like Son Goku has graced me with his presence as well. 3 of my brothers are here in front of me, trapped in the flesh of their containers. Shukaku exclaimed, laughing almost maniacally. Look at me now, brothers. Watch as I kill the very humans that keep you prisoner. Watch as I prove that I, the Ichibi, prove my superiority over you all. With those words, Shukaku charged forward at the Jinchuriki in front of him. Naruto, Han, and Roshi all got into position to continue fighting the Bijū. Quick general notes. 1. The technique Hinata used by channeling her chakra through Kankuro's chakra strings is actually the method how Niji defeated Kadamaru during the canonical Sasuke retrieval arc. I wasn't certain if I conveyed that properly, so I wanted to make note of it here. 2. Remember the Bikochu arc? If I recall, it is one of the more popular filler arcs in the entire franchise. Anyway, the 3 IWA shinobi in the arc are from the Kamizuru clan, and they claim they are the grandchildren of the showdown Tsuchikage. Since I recognize this filler arc as canon by having Hinata develop the protection of the 8 trigrams, 64 palms, I decided that the showdown Tsuchikage must be a B user. Therefore, Kamizuru Ishikawa uses B-related ninjutsu. He's just a lot more advanced, and has a much more diverse fighting style than the Kamizuru members in the actual Bikochu arc. You know, because he's the founder of IWA and a former Tsuchikage, after all. Smiley face. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.